Everybody for making the trek on over here and hanging out with us. True Abutment's been very kind to offer their spaces and have a good place to do some learning, and they've got a pretty great facility here where we can play with all the toys and load cases and do some hands-on stuff. It sure is exciting to actually do some hands-on things nowadays versus webinars. I'm so tired, so tired of webinars, as I'm sure everybody else is. I just can't do anymore. I just really can't do anymore. I hate teaching them. I did a class that usually takes easily 3 hours on a in person, right? And teaching it in a webinar, I think it took 45 minutes, and I'm sitting there like, boy, wow, it just nobody asks any questions, nobody to look at, no idea what's happening. So yeah, very nice to be in person. Are we good to go? Anybody? YouTube, live stream, stuff like that? Good? All right, awesome. Well, anyway, I'm Dr. Storm Hagen, if I haven't met all of you before. My little spiel is I owe my career in dentistry to Cerec. So when I was a kid, my dad's a dentist, my mom's a hygienist. That makes me cheap labor. So I grew up in the office, right? I was sterilizing instruments, assisting, working in the front, things like that. Yeah, that was just cheap labor, I'll just say that. And when I was a kid, I wanted nothing to do with dentistry at all. I was very much into technology, and we didn't have any of that stuff in the office, right? We had stone models, we had paper charts, there was no computers, nothing like that. And I couldn't figure out why my parents wanted to stick their hands in people's mouths all day long. It just seemed so foreign to me. And then we started getting technology, right? About 23 years ago, my dad got Cerec, and that brought me into the office, and I was always playing with it and doing updates and things like that. And that's really what got me interested in dentistry. I kind of got me into the office, and then all of a sudden, you know, we have computers in the operatories. We've got computers everywhere. Everything is digital now, right? And it just was so nice, and it got me to see, okay, this is not really just sticking your hands at people's mouths, right? It's more than that. It's a nice mixture of art and engineering. You get to talk to people all day long. You're not just sitting there on a computer all day. And you get to use your hands and make things, but you also get to use that kind of healthcare side of your brain. So I really am indebted to technology and Cerec specifically for my career in dentistry. So today, in collaboration with True Abutment and Ivoclar, we're going to do kind of go through the workflow, the different bits and pieces as far as restoring implants fully digitally with Cerec, whether that's screw retained, cement retained. Also show you how to send things out, just in case you've got a complicated case, or maybe you just don't want to deal with it, or you got in a little bit over your head. True Abutment makes that very easy to send that out to the lab as well. No really different steps. So I'll kind of walk you through that. Our agenda for today, basically, my section, we're going to do a little implant overview, so the parts, the workflow, how to use it. Stephen from Ivoclar is going to do a little bit of talking about staining and glazing, some different techniques that you can also apply not only to implants, but to your regular Emax or Empress crowns, things like that. He's also going to go over some cementation. There's some very specific steps as far as cementing the crown to the tie base. We're going to take a little break, and then we'll be back here again. I've loaded a case on everybody's computer, and I have the same case on mine. So we'll kind of go through the workflow about how to digitally design the crown. Again, it's pretty similar to what you're used to with Cerec, but there are a few little nuances and things like that that require some tricks, basically, to make your life easier, whether when you're designing a crown. And then we'll sneak back over to the other room after that. We'll do hands-on stain and glaze. I've got the crown that we're going to design here. Like the Food Network, I've made it in advance. So we'll go ahead and stain and glaze them. We've got a few ovens, so we'll actually bake them. While they're baking, we'll have a little Q&A session and just kind of hang out. And then when they're done, we'll actually go ahead and cement them on a tie base as well, so we can see how the cement works, all the different steps and things like that. Just very helpful. Because like I said, you know, if you're somebody who's used to bonding, things like that, it's not going to be that big of a deal. But there's just a few little alterations to be made because we're doing it extra orally, and the cement is a little bit different than the normal stuff that you're used to. And then we'll have lunch. So restoring implants with Cerec. Let's talk about some of the ways that we can do it, right? Screw retain, have a seat anywhere, yeah, pick any open seat, yeah, it's all good. So screw retained, right? We want to put the implant in the crown in the mouth, we want to screw it down, we want to screw it down, and then we're going to put a little composite over the top. So basically what we need for that is just two different things, right? We need what's called a tie base right here, and we need an implant crown, okay? Now, if we're going to do it cement retained, we're still going to need our tie base. We're going to mill a custom abutment to cement to the tie base, and then we're going to mill our crown to place on top of that, and this is going to get cemented intraorally. This is done extraorally from here over, and then that's going to be done intraorally, okay? Basically the same parts, that's the nice part. You don't need anything special between the two. So let's talk about some of the players that are involved with storing implants, okay? So we have what's called a scan post, and I think, you know, the parts, doing all the different things with implants, there's just so many different names and parts, and there's different ones for every implant. It just gets very convoluted, so I'm going to try and keep it as simple as humanly possible. A scan post equals an impression coping, okay? So this is going to tell the machine where that implant is in that patient's head. This stays with you. It gets sterilized, it stays in your office, does not leave with the patient, okay? Now the next thing is the scan body, okay? So the scan body goes on top of here. You can see there's a little notch right here, and that engages with that notch right there, okay? When the computer looks at this, the only thing it's looking at is this. It's not seeing the scan post at all, okay? It's only looking at this cap. There's a little pyramid on top, and if you look very closely, it's not symmetrical. So orientation matters when you're putting that on there, okay? So the process is we'll screw the scan post down into the implant, then we place the scan body on top, and True Abutment makes this very easy. This notch needs to line up perfectly, and you'll hear a nice little click, okay? My biggest complaint with the Cerec system is this is very kind of a harder plastic with the True Abutment system. The Cerec ones are kind of rubbery. It's easy to get them on cockeyed, and then your crown is cockeyed and will never fit ever. So make sure you get that nice snap down there. Another trick I like to use is when you're scanning, if you just hold up the foot pedal, the camera turns into intraoral photo mode. It will not scan. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll stick that on there, and then I will wave the camera over it, look at it where it's magnified 15 times, and just make sure that we've got that lined up. That's a really nice second check. And as soon as you let go of the foot pedal, it's going to start scanning. So if it looks good, then you're good to go. Make sure when you scan this also you're getting the complete area scanned, the whole scan post scanned, because sometimes the camera wants to cut it out, and I'll go over that in a little bit. The next thing we need is a tie base, okay? So this is what the crown, if we're doing screw retain, that's what the crown's going to get bonded to, or the custom abutment, and this is leaving with the patient, okay? When you look in the software, we can scan. If we didn't have the scan post and we only had the tie base, it is an option to scan with the tie base, okay? That is an option, but it is not recommended. And the reason for that is this notch still matches up with this, but this is quite a bit shorter. This platform is now at the gingiva, below the gingiva, versus this is sitting way taller. So what happens is if you scan with a tie base, it's difficult to tell if that notch is lined up. It's much, much easier to get it on the wrong way, and now you've caused yourself a lot of trouble. So I always recommend using a scan post. I basically never scan with a tie base because the risk is too great. Yeah, it might fly, but there's nothing worse than having to call the patient back and say, oh, sorry, I gotta take another. Remember that awesome machine I told you about? Well, yeah, it didn't work and I need something else. The next thing we need is an implant block. We cannot, if we're doing a screw retain crown or a custom abutment, we cannot use the same block that we normally use. It has to have a pre-milled hole in the center. Our milling units cannot mill that hole, okay? And the reason for that is this notch has a female portion on the inside of this block as well, and it's a feature that our milling units cannot mill, at least our non-lab side ones, okay? So we need to make sure that we have the correct block. There's different sizes and different hole sizes as well. I'll go over that in a second. And then finally, we need some cement. This is the cement that we use, multi-link hybrid abutment cement, And this is pretty much the only one I recommend is the yellow one, high opacity, okay? So it's very white, it's very opaque. And the reason for that is we're blocking out this titanium. It'll show through on the crown, or especially a custom abutment, something like that. You'll get some graying of the margin. So the high opacity really makes a big difference there. Also, this cement is not light cured. It's chemical cure only, okay? And it takes about 7 to 8 minutes to set. So we are leaving it outside the mouth. Stephen will go over that a little bit as well, but we usually have something to hold those together as that's setting up. Putting a light on it, curing light's not going to do anything for you. So like I talked about, what's the difference between a tie base and a scan post? So now you can see the tie base sits this level, this platform right here, equals this part right here. So you can see how much shorter the tie base is and how much easier it is to make sure we got that notch lined up. So moral of the story, just always get the scan post. And the scan post is reusable. These caps are sterilizable as well from True Abutment. The Sirona ones are not, they'll melt. So it's by far worth it. Just buy the scan post, do it the right way. It'll save you a lot of heartache. If you guys have any questions, feel free to shout them out as well as we're going along, trying to keep it as simple as possible. Yes, go for it.
Is that tie base or the scan post the same size and height as the Sirona scan post?
It's correct. The GH1 is.
Okay, so
yeah, I'll go over a little differences with the True Abutment stuff as far as the heights are concerned in a little bit, yeah. But yes, the moral of the story is yes, a GH1 scan post is exactly equal to a Sirona scan post.
So if I'm using that Sirona scan post, then I can go ahead and use, if I were to use
Yep.
the Sirona system, it would be exactly the same.
Yep, totally fine. Exactly right. So let's walk through a case. So we've got a number 19 here. This is a Nobel Active, okay, 5.0. Our surgeon, or we looked at it and they say, great, go ahead, ready to restore, okay? Bone looks good, implant's well integrated, go for it, okay? So what are we gonna do? Well, we know what kind of implant it is. We know it's a Nobel Active 5.0, okay? If we look on the implant manufacturer's site, we can see that it's a regular platform, okay? That's what we need to know. And again, this is kind of where the implant stuff gets complicated because there's so many different parts you have to, and it's not, you can't fudge it. It doesn't work. So we need to know what kind of implant it is. So we know it's a Nobel, we know it's an active, and we know the platform size. Those are pretty much the main things that we need to know, okay? And so to make sure that we get the correct parts, we're going to jump over to True Abutment's scan post list. You can get this off of True Abutment's website. You can just Google it. And so we'll find our implant that we have, right? So we've got a Nobel Active, okay? We've got an RP, a regular platform, not a narrow platform. So we know we need this Nobel Active 5.0 NBA. And this is what it's going to be designated in the software as well. It's going to ask you, hey, what scan post are you using, okay? And the same goes true, there's more Zimmer, Straumann, all those guys, so same thing. So Straumann, bone level, regular collar, we need a SBL 4.1. It's a nice little flow chart across, okay? You can always call True Abutment when you're ordering the parts. They know this stuff very well as also, so if you say, hey, I've got a Nobel Active 3.5, they go, okay, great, that's gonna be the narrow platform. And they'll send you the correct one. So double check that again. You know, it's not like having the wrong color composite where you can still kind of fudge it. Sometimes it doesn't fit. A narrow does not fit into a wide and vice versa. So that's the first challenge, okay, is getting the right parts. When we get that note from our surgeon, just go ahead and order this if you don't have it already. If it's something that you regularly restore, like me, I restore a lot of Nobel, I have this scan post all the time. It doesn't go away, I just sterilize it. So I know as soon as a surgeon comes in and they say, yep, it's Nobel Active, great, I'm good to go. I have both scan posts, I don't have to worry about it. I'll have to order the tie base later, or I can order it proactively then, but I know I can at least take the scan. And that's what you'll notice. I mean, as surgeons or you restore more implants, you'll just kind of build up this catalog of impression copings, basically, so you'll have them all on hand. So how do we put this into the machine? So you'll notice on the left side, we're normally living in this area up here, which is our single crown mode, okay? Well, now we're gonna jump down to the implant mode, so right here, okay? And we're gonna tell it what we wanna do. Do we wanna do a screw retain crown? Or do we wanna do an abutment with a crown, AKA a cement retain crown, okay? So in this case, our placement looked great. We're going to do a screw retain crown. We're going to do it in biogeneric individual. That's what we use 99% of the time. If you're doing an anterior or you want to copy a specific one, those options are available as well. You can do biogeneric copy or you can do copy and mirror. We're going to tell it what material we're going to use. In this case, we're using Emax CAD abutment. Okay? Abutment block means it has the hole in the center of it. Tell it what milling unit we're using, and then remember back on that chart, it told us we needed that NBA 5.0. This is where it's asking for. It's saying, what tie base are you going to use? Well, I just looked at my chart. We're going to use an NBA 5.0, and then it's going to ask you, what are you scanning with? And you're going to say scan post. Okay? If you were scanning with a tie base, again, I don't recommend that, you can put tie base there. And then it'll fill in everything. It says, okay, well, since you're using the Nobel Active 5.0 tie base, I know that you're using the Nobel Active 5.0 scan post. Then we choose our tooth, so we click number 19, that's why it's gold over there, and we move forward. So the most important thing is anybody using Omnicam here? Or does everybody have Prime Scan? Omnicam? Okay. So Omnicam, guys, when you first get these, sandblast this portion right here, okay? Because sometimes the Omnicam, you know how sometimes it struggles with reflection, and Prime Scan sometimes has a hard time with that as well. It'll save you so much time and heartache by sandblasting that, okay? It'll just pick it up, no problem, very, very easily.
Is it powder?
Yeah, or powder, yeah, either way. Yeah, I just enjoy sandblasting because then you don't have to do it every time. But yeah, just make sure you sandblast it, and then the most important thing while you're doing this notch, okay? Because that block has a circle with a notch inside of it, we cannot move our sprue in the milling stage. It is fixed in one position, and it is fixed 90 degrees to where this notch is. I don't know why they don't just make it the same, but you know, that's Sirona, I guess. So the most important thing you need to know is your sprue is coming out 90 degrees to this. So if you put this notch on a contact, you'll be fine. Your sprue will not be on a contact. If you put this notch on the buccal or the lingual, your sprue is going to be on the mesial or the distal. Okay? More specifically, the sprue goes 90 degrees clockwise to that. So if you really wanted to get crazy, you know, on number 19, put it on the mesial, so then your sprue will be on the lingual, or vice versa, whatever you want to do. But that's how that works. You'll make that mistake once, and then as you're polishing off a sprue and back and forth, unscrew, screw in, unscrew, screw in to get it perfect, you won't do it again. But basically, moral of the story, put the notch on the contact, don't worry about it after that, okay? As we go through and scan, okay, so you'll notice here, instead of our normal 3 catalogs, we now have 4, okay? So we've got our lower jaw, upper jaw, buccal, and now we've got something called scan body. And depending on what tooth you're using, it's going to automatically put this in there for you. And in this case, since we're doing a number 19, it's a scan body lower catalog, okay? So let's go through and take our scans. So we take our lower jaw scan. How we do this is what you're going to use for your tissue, okay? So you're going to take off the healing abutment, and you're going to go ahead and take a scan here. Try and capture all the way down in here, and the very important when you're doing this is the scan you're going to use for your interproximal contacts. So make sure you're getting the interproximals of the adjacent teeth. It's much easier because we don't have a big impression coping or scan post there to block us out. So make sure that you're rolling the camera nicely and you're getting those interproximal contacts. I prefer using the virtual articulator if I can when I'm restoring implants, so I can at least see some of the excursions and I'm not messing with it too much in the mouth. So I would recommend, actually this scan's a little bit on the smaller side. I would recommend trying to get at least the contralateral canine when we're doing these scans. That way the virtual articulator can see the guidance on both sides, okay? Next step is going to be the scan post scan, okay? So we place the scan post in, tighten it down, make sure that we've got the hex engaged. I always recommend taking a confirmation radiograph to make sure that thing is seated all the way. And then we place our scan body, the white part, on top, and we take another scan. Basically the exact same thing. This one, you don't have to worry too much about the interproximal contacts because it's going to use the other image for that. Basically this, all it's doing is you can see where our lower jaw scan right here, see how it's kind of translucent? It's stitched these things together. So basically the only thing it's using this for is this white cap, okay? And when we're doing this scan, the most important thing, this is the only time you're allowed to overscan, okay? I know when we do Cerec training and things like that, we're always beating into your head, do not overscan. That thing is capturing so many images per second, you're gonna beat it up. Basically, you're gonna slow everything down. This is the only time you're allowed to overscan, okay? And this is really where the sandblasting comes in handy. If the computer does not see this white cap connected to the scan post, which is connected to the gingiva, it'll probably cut it out because it's going to think that it's a piece of the tongue or lip, okay? And then when you move forward, there will be nothing there for you to choose, okay? So this is the only time you really need to get inside of there, and you need to make sure this is a very good scan. This is what I want you to see, okay? It needs to be fully connected and touching the gingiva so that that computer knows that that thing is based with the model, okay? It's connected to the patient. Very, very important, okay? And this is, again, if you sandblast this, Omni, without this sandblasted, it's very difficult to get this. It'll constantly try and cut things out even as you're scanning over here. So just make sure sandblasting will change your life. It makes it so much easier. And all you have to do is sandblast that part. You don't have to sandblast the part that's going into the implant, and you don't have to sandblast the chimney above because that's getting covered. Okay, so you're just that little middle part. Okay. The next step, so we've taken all of our scans. I would say usually the workflow that I do, okay, so again, we'll talk on number 19 implant. Patient comes in, they sit down, usually no anesthetic or anything like that. The healing cap is in there. I will take the opposing, so I'll take the upper right away, and I'll take the bite. You can take the bite with the healing cap in there. The computer is smart enough to edit that out, okay? So I'll do that before we do anything, okay? The next step is I take off the healing cap, and I take my lower jaw scan, okay, all the way to the contralateral canine. Then I place the scan post, take a confirmation x-ray, put the cap on the top, and take my lower jaw scan, and take my scan post scan, okay? That's the workflow I do. So opposing, bite, lower jaw, scan post, okay? That way, we're not giving it a long time for the tissue to collapse, and all of a sudden we can't seat the scan post. And we have time to, basically, the scan post is still in there, so if we need to do something, take another scan at the end, we haven't taken it out already, and then now we're putting things in and unscrewing, okay? So after we've taken our scans, we move forward. At this point, I would definitely don't let the patient leave. I don't even sit the patient up. I just leave them sitting back, okay? And you need to move forward and process that scan, right? So it does its little spinning wheel thing, right? And you need to make sure on the next screen that you see the scan post or the scan body, a little white cap, okay? So what you're doing is you're double checking the computer that it has not cut that out, okay? Because if it has and the patient is gone, they're coming back. There's nothing you can do. You are SOL, you're just sitting there, okay? So make sure that before, like I said, I don't even sit them up. That way it doesn't seem strange that I have to lean them back down again, okay? Just make sure that that white cap is there and it knows. And you'll see what that looks like when we do our hands-on portion, okay? I also quickly go forward to the design phase and make sure that I have enough clearance. This comes in a little bit more handy when we're using true abutment because they have different height scan posts. So sometimes if I chose one that's too tall and I don't have enough clearance for the crown or for the tie base, then I can go back and choose a shorter one, okay? And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. I'm just trying to give you the rundown on restoring implants regularly right now, and then we'll kind of dive into more true abutment stuff in a little bit, okay? But that's probably, yeah, it'll save you a lot of headache and a lot of embarrassment, basically. Just make sure that it has not cut that out. And generally, if you scan all the way to the bottom, you make sure that that scan post is connected, you won't have an issue. So this is what you'll see. Basically, so the workflow, usually it'll take you all the way to here, okay, afterwards. If everything's good, you can see here, click scan body head, we've got a check mark. That means the machine saw the scan body, it knows where it is, it's already chosen it, okay? We can always go back to that and verify, but this is good. That means you're good to go. The main difference here, and if you haven't restored implants before, you haven't seen this, edit baseline, okay? What that's telling the computer is it's telling it where you want basically that crown to change from being horizontal to vertical, okay? Where you want that transition to happen. So if we've got a nice wide healing abutment there and the tissue's pretty good, or if we're using a custom healer, it'll do a pretty good job generally choosing that. There's an option over here called Use Gingiva Mask. Generally, I would say to make sure that that is unchecked. If that is on, it's going to try and find the contour of the gingiva where the gingiva starts going in like this and use that as your margin. If you're using a stock healing abutment like that, that's not really what we want. We don't want like a little circle crown coming out like this. So I would say 99% of the time, unless you're using a custom healer, I would say don't use that, okay? So just automatically uncheck it. And usually when you uncheck it, it'll remember your preference, so you don't have to do it every single time. So as we can see here, this looks like a tooth. It's coming up nicely. We can edit this line easily, just like editing a margin. We can double click it and move along and change it. Sometimes it'll make it too wide on the lingual or the buccal or something like that. Next step, we go to our design phase, okay? And we follow our normal design rules for Cerec. So formation of a Cerec crown, okay? FOCC, so fissure. We still need to worry about our minimal thickness there. Now we've got, you can see a little minimal thickness bubble there. We have minimal thickness above our tie base now that we have to worry about. Generally, it's not too big of an issue unless the person really has no clearance, okay? Occlusion, just go through your normal design process on occlusion. Generally, I like my implants to be in slightly lighter occlusion. So for me, that's a little bit of light blue, turquoise color for me. Contours, we're making sure that our crown has the appropriate contours, it's nicely rounded, fits in the arch form, etc., etc. And then the last thing we're going to worry about is our interproximal contacts. What I always recommend is before you take the scan, go through and plane those contacts with a fine like flame point burr. It will save you a lot of time. Make sure that those things are perfectly parallel to the implant. It's helpful if you can put the scan post in there if you need something to show you exactly what the angle is. But if you're doing the screw retained and those contacts are like this, you're going to have a really tough time maintaining contact. It's going to be really tight going in, and then as soon as you clear this portion, your contact's going to be wide open. So if you can plane those proactively, and we're not talking a lot, but just make it so they're nice and parallel, that thing is going to slot in perfectly, okay? And so that's where our contacts portion comes in. Again, I like a little bit of green on mine, but that's very specific to your particular machine and your preferences.
Hey, Dr. Hagen?
Yes?
Dr. Carrie Leslie is asking, can you scan a Serona scan post and cement onto true abutment tie base, or are they not?
Can you scan using a Cerona tie base or a scan post and cement onto a true abutment tie base? Yes, you can, as long as you're using a GH1 true abutment tie base. So GH1 true abutment equals Cerona scan post / tie base. No problems there. Okay, so the last thing we have to worry about now is tissue pressure. Okay, so the one thing we add to the bottom, to the end, and that is when we look below the crown, we're going to see how much tissue pressure we're putting when we fully seat that crown. How much we're pushing on that gingiva. Okay, and the best way to do this is we can flip the model over, and we can see here. Here's the tissue, okay? We can see the crown sticking through it. That means it's not really going to give you kind of those blue, green, yellow, red colors very much. It's kind of up to you to figure it out. And this can be very difficult to see. So a good trick here is to use the restoration slider on the left side and lower the translucency of the restoration. So now the restoration is slightly see-through, okay? Now you can see the tissue through it. And now you can use your normal tools, your add or remove tool, and you can contour that. Ideally, we want a nice little S-curve like this, right? Just so the tissue has somewhere. We don't want to be squishing the tissue and pushing it out. We want a little area for that tissue to grow into and attach to. So this is a great way to visualize that, because now we can see it through there. You can rotate it on its side and see how it's interacting with that tissue. Okay, and again, something we'll play with here. All right. Now, that's basically it for screw retained, okay? We hit manufacture and we mill it, done. What about if we want to do a cement retained crown? What happens if, one, we prefer cement retained, or maybe the implant was not perfectly aligned, the screw channel is coming out, the buccal cusp, or it's coming out the incisal edge, something like that. So basically, the only difference is at the beginning, you remember when we were putting it in that administration screen, we told it we wanted a screw retained crown. Well, you would tell it you want a cement retain or an abutment with a crown, okay? Then everything after that is exactly the same. You design the crown first, do all the processes that we just did. The only difference is before you make it, now there's an extra option in your tool bar, okay? And it's called split. So basically, you go through, you tell the computer exactly what you want as far as the crown goes, and then now it's going to split it for you into an abutment and a crown, okay? You don't make them individually. So all you do is say split, and you click apply, and it's going to go ahead and split those. So now you can see here, our crown has gone translucent, and we have a custom abutment below it. Okay? The most important thing when we're doing this is see how there's some ridges and things like that. Maybe the abutment's a little bit rough, or it has some things. Sometimes the milling unit can't mill that perfectly, and you'll have seating issues. Okay? So before you mill anything, you're going to use, if you're on the abutment, it'll give you this tool called scale, and there's an option called smooth out. That is a requirement to use before you mill it, okay? That will prevent any seating errors, things like that. So you go on there, you use your smooth out tool, and it's going to got nicely rid of all those little wee-waws in there, and it'll update the crown as well. So you don't have to do it to both. Whatever you change on the abutment will automatically get updated to the crown as well, okay? And we can also alter, let me go back there. In this tools option, we can also alter the height of the margin. So we can put it equigingival, slightly below, whatever you want to do there. You can customize it to your heart's content as well. And again, we'll play with that when we do our hands-on portion. What's up, Dino?
Does it automatically, like you said, if it's coming out the buccal cusp, does it automatically give you that tilt on that abutment?
Yep, exactly right. Yeah, so that's why you design the crown first. You'd give it what you want your final result to be, and then yeah, it'll create the custom abutment to be seated that way, and a crown that draws right on top of it. Yeah. And you can customize the parameters as well in there. You can get as nerdy as you want, whether you want how big your cement spacer is, how much taper you want on there. I mean, you can do everything you possibly want, okay? So that's just the main difference for cement retain. Not a humongous difference, and really as long as you remember to use that smooth tool, you'll be fine, okay? So now going back to screw retain, we're ready to manufacture, okay? So you can see here, we put our notch on the mesial, so our sprue is on the lingual, okay? Again, if you went to the sprue tool and tried to turn it out, it would be gray. It would not let you adjust that. So here's the different blocks, okay? So we've got an A14 block. This is smaller, and generally this is used for custom abutments because they don't have the full crown attached, okay? So it's not quite as tall, but you could also use it for a screw retain crown if you wanted to, if you had a really small crown. You can see that this was an MO opacity, so it's very opaque, and generally that, again, that's what we're using for our custom abutments because we're trying to block out that titanium, versus something like here, an A16 block that's taller. These are more screw retained blocks, and these come in your more traditional flavors, so A2. They're all LT, okay? They're all low translucency because, again, we're still working to block out that titanium, but they come in your normal A, B, C shades, things like that, okay? Now, there's different hole sizes as well, which relates to this hole here. You can see this is an L block, A16L, and this is an A16S. I would say the majority of implants use the L size, okay? So I pretty much stock A16Ls. That's pretty much what I have on hand all the time. And to know which size to use, we, again, refer back to our handy-dandy chart. So remember here, we were Nobel Active RP. We were using a Nobel Active 5.0, okay? And if we look at this final column, it's going to tell us what size hole we want to use. So like I said, there's only 2 of them on this entire list that are small, and usually they're mini implants or narrow platform, if anything. But for the most part, if you have an A16L, you can pretty much do anything you want. You could mill a custom abutment with it. you could mill a screw retained crown with it. Okay. I want to say the price difference between the 16 and the 14 is not really significant, a few dollars. So in my practice, I'm generally doing screw retained anyways, so I pretty much always have A16s on hand. So the main difference when we're milling these, this does not apply to prime mill, but it applies to MC or MCX or MCXL, okay? It does what's called two-pass milling. So what it does is, because this block, you can see how tall this block is compared to a normal 14 block that we're used to is about this big, okay? So what it does is it's going to take one of the burrs and it's going to plane off this entire side, okay? It's just going to go all the way down. It's going to look very strange and you're going to think there's something wrong with your machine, but it's just going to go. The other burr is just sitting there not doing anything, and this one goes and cuts all the way down the entire length of the block, okay? So don't be surprised if that happens. Milling time, because it does that, is a little bit longer, probably 20 minutes or so, versus the average 12 to 13 minutes that we're used to doing Emacs, okay? A common error when this happens is, so you can see here how the block used to extend here and it's gone all the way down and cut the end of it off, okay? Sometimes what it does, normally when we mill, it'll do its touch process, right? So it'll touch the block, make sure you put the right block in. It's going to go through and do that two-pass milling, and the main difference is when it does that first part, or after it finishes that first pass, it's going to do the touch process again. And sometimes what happens is a little piece of ceramic chips off and gets stuck up against the sprue right there, up against the mandrel, and when it does its touch process, it hits that piece of ceramic and it thinks there's something wrong with the block and it turns red, okay? If you see that happen, if you're milling if you're milling an implant crown, it's done its pass, okay, it's just planed off, you have a block that's just flat on one side and it's red, look inside your milling chamber. Don't change anything, don't press stop, don't do anything. Just open it up and look if there's a little piece of Emacs sitting stuck there, and flick it off with your finger. And then click continue, and I guarantee you it'll work. That's usually what it is, okay?
You want to see a little bit of metal?
No. Yes, you want to see a little bit. Yeah, it'll usually cut into a little bit of metal, but very occasionally a piece of Emacs chips off and it just gets stuck, and it happens to be in the area where those burrs are going to check the size, and then it goes, hey, this block there should be nothing here, and it's hitting that little piece. So don't, but if you press stop, that block is done. It's gone. You just wasted money, okay? So just make sure if you see something red and it looks, there's no crown here, this is just a solid block, go in there and just make sure there's nothing there, okay?
Never had that happen. Now it's going to happen.
Yeah, you see, yeah. It happens very rarely, but it can be very confusing. So some quick common errors when we're restoring implants, okay? Not taking a confirmation radiograph. Just make this part of your routine. It's very tempting, especially if you're in a rush. You go, I felt it click in there, it's fine. But I just want a nice bite wing just to make sure everything is seated. This is a fully seated GH1 scan post, okay? And it's actually, yeah, it's a number 19 on a Nobel Active, okay? So here, it can be difficult to tell on an angled PA like this, but this is not seated, okay? So you can see how there's just, look at this distance right here. Look how closely this is to that, okay? Look how close that is versus here, we have more room. And again, if that was a straight on bite wing, it would be much easier to see, okay? But just make sure that that is seated all the way, okay? Because this is what's gonna happen. And you go, wow, it's in perfect occlusion. And then you look at that and it's like, oh no. You're done. You're starting over, basically. Okay, there's nothing you can do to salvage that. So that's the biggest way, and I think in that particular case, it was binding on the bone. Okay, that's very, very common. If it's a really deeper, I mean, this implant's not that deep, but it's got some bone coming up around it, and that's where true abutment comes in really handy. Okay, but that's the easiest way to save yourself some heartache, basically. Okay. Come on. There we go. Okay, same thing. Really common in the anterior. Again, it looked like it was seated. This is, we're probably 3 or 4 millimeters subgingival here. Great, looks good, looks like it's seated. It's not anywhere close to being seated. It's totally binding on the bone right here. Okay. So in a case like this, okay, actually let me go back to that. In a case like this, there's nothing you can do, right? With this particular scan post, short of profiling the bone, there's no way that you're going to get that to seat, okay? And before true abutment came along, that's really what we were stuck with, right? We'd have to go, okay, well, we'll take that out, put a regular impression coping in, take a PVS, and send it to the lab. That's it. That's your only option, okay? But now, with true abutment, what they have is different length scan posts and complementary tie bases to go along with it, okay? So that's what you have in your little kit. What you have on your desk is called the Alpha Kit, and that's the different lengths. So GH1 starts over here, it's gold, okay? And that is equal to the normal tie base, or the normal scan post from Sirona, okay? 0.8 millimeters from the platform to the top of that. And then as you go to the right, so GH stands for gingival height, okay? So as you go to the right, GH2, 3, and 4, they go up by 1 millimeter, okay? So 0.8, 1.8, 2.8, 3.8, okay? So depending on how deep that implant is and what you're going to use is basically from the top of the implant, from the platform to the crest of the gingiva is going to be your guide, okay? So here's what you can see, the differences between the two. So 0.8 millimeters from here to the top, okay? And then you can see it just gets taller and taller and taller. And that's really changed the game as far as restoring implants with Cerec. This was such a humongous problem, especially with the trend now, right? We're placing all of our implants a millimeter subcrestal now, right? We're not placing it at the crest of the bone. So it just automatically ruled out so many restorations using the traditional system. And then true abutment came along and basically solved that, okay?
You want to get the tie base margin equal gingiva?
Correct. I have a little chart, so I'll show you. Yeah. Yeah, so like I said, so 0.8, 1.8, 2.8, 3.8, okay? So they go up 1 millimeter each. Yeah, go for it.
If that other case where the bone binded on the GH1, would you still have to profile it if you moved up to like a GH2 or GH3?
I'll show you in a second. Yeah, I have that exact picture. So there we go, right? Thank you for leading me into it perfectly. So right, not seated at all. And here we go, GH4, perfectly seated. Easy peasy, no bone profiling, nothing, right? Very easy. We could see how this is all the way seated in here, the screw is all the way down, versus this just not anywhere close. It just totally changes the game. So how do we know? So, right, we just learned how to restore an implant with Cerec. Our brains are a little bit mushy from all the things I've thrown at you today. Well, let's add just a tiny bit more complication, okay? How do we know? So we know we need a scan post, right? How do we know which GH to use, okay? So basically we do a little algebra. We're going to solve for X, okay? And this is how you know what you need. If you're doing a screw-attained crown, if the top of the implant is anywhere from 1 to 3 millimeters from the gingival margin, you're going to use a GH1, okay? And then basically you just increment it in 1 millimeter increments up from there. That's it, as simple as that. Sometimes there's some other complicating factors, like if the bone is very large or something like that, maybe you'll have to use a one size taller one. But as a general rule, this works extremely well, okay? So that's it. So just take a perio probe. As soon as I take off that healing cap, I have a perio probe right there and I'll just measure it, or sometimes I'll just guesstimate. But measure that area, go, well, it's 5 millimeters from there, I'm gonna use a GH3, okay? Or if there's plenty of clearance, or and what you want to do is make sure, sometimes, you know, buccal and lingual heights are not the same, right? So pick the lowest of the two. So if the buccal is 6 millimeters and the lingual is 4, number 4, we're going to use the 4 millimeter region, okay? Because we don't want that tie base being exposed on the other side, okay? That's it. Now if we're doing cement retained, because we need more clearance, these change a little bit, okay? So we need more height, more depth of the implant, depending on what we are, because now we're stacking not only a custom abutment, but we also have the clearance for the crown. Okay, so we basically just added 1.1 millimeter on top of that, because the crown has to be a millimeter thick also. Does that make sense? Okay, and there's charts like this. If you go on True Abutment's website, this chart is there. Just say, hey, that's what I want to use. But just get in the habit, you'll know. You'll just look at it and go, nah, that's a GH3. It just looks right. So here you go. Again, a case like this, super simple with true abutment. I could never have restored this with a regular tie base and a scan post. It just wouldn't work. It would be binding on this distal bone, and it would never work. And so now you look at this. We look at the gingival height. I mean, this is at least 4 millimeters or so right there. So this is a GH2. Yeah, 2. Might even be a 3. And it's a non-issue. And so when we go to restore that, boom, look at that. Perfect. Seats perfectly. No problemo.
So that's how you know the exact tie base you're going to use.
Yep, exactly. And so when you depending whatever scan post you use the corresponding tie base. So you use a GH3 scan post, GH3 tie base. Okay, that's it. Now it's easy to punt as well. Okay, so if you get it over your head or you don't have enough clearance, right? Maybe you need a full zirconia crown, something like that. With that exact same scan post, you can do all of these things, okay? So we can make a custom abutment. We can make an angled screw channel. We can use the same scan post and make an all-on 4, all-on 6, okay? We can do a partial locator. We can do all of those things with the same scan post. You don't need different. I think that was my frustration too with the Sirona system is the Sirona scan post, the only thing you can use it for is a tie base. You can't send that to a lab. They can't convert that file. They can't do any of that stuff. With this same scan post, you can do whatever you want. And even if you scanned with a GH4 and then you want to do a custom abutment, that's fine. You want to send it to True Abutment or you want to send it to the lab, just tell them you used a GH4 and they can convert that internally. Very easy. Okay, so it's great. You don't have to throw away the scan because you couldn't restore it, basically. Yep, go for it.
Do you have to use a Sirona scanner, or can you use a different scanner to scan the...
If you're sending it to the lab, you can use any scanner that you want. Yeah, yeah. But if you're
use the buttons?
if you're restoring it, you have to use a Sirona scanner as far as the workflow that we just did.
Like these other custom...
No, this is fine. Yeah, as long as it's a digital scanner, all they're looking at is the file. So yeah, that's no problem. You can send it out. Yeah, as long as you can get the file to your lab. As far as milling it in-house, yeah, it's going to be Sirona. Yes?
Do they do all the designing themselves, or do they still look at your initial crown design and then do the abutment part themselves? Or
for like a custom abutment sort of thing? Yeah, so they'll do their own crown design. When you export something, at least with the Sirona system, your design does not go with it. Any other questions? Anything? Okay, time for Ivoclar. Anything else before I hand it over to Stephen? Threw a lot of information at you. I think it'll make a lot more sense when we do the hands-on as well. And we'll be able to play with the models as well, because you'll be able to see the difference between different size scan posts and things like that. Good? Everybody good? All right, let's get Stephen. Ivoclar Stephen. Perfect. Ivoclar Stephen. Yep.
I was looking here, I'm sorry.
Oh, I thought so too, but
Okay.
change of plans.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Sure.
Sorry, guys.
I've never had the mic there.
Oh, under the first button. Can you tap it?
Good.
Okay, thank you. All right, can you guys see my screen? Good morning, how are you guys? I think I know almost all of you guys. For those of you who don't know me, Stephen Al with Ivoclar. So we're gonna go over a little bit of the abutment fabrications. What are they? How do we use them? Kind of what does it look like? So with Cerec chairside, we can fabricate custom abutments along with custom screw retained crowns. You know, this is a little bit of an older slide where we use a MO. We changed all of these to LT from a shading perspective. You have your tie base sleeve that goes over the actual abutment portion of it. As Dr. Storm had mentioned, there is an anti-rotational key portion to it. So when you're placing it, typically, and we'll go over this in person, when you are doing it, you want to make sure you index the tie base along with the abutment before you deliver it, so that when you put cement in it, you're not constantly turning it to try to get it seated all the way. And then this is the hybrid abutment crown portion. Again, same technique. We'll go over a little bit of the design aspects of it. So preparation, well, you just have to shape the ovate Pontic site. And I will say one of the things that we haven't talked about here, or that's not included, is that you guys can also fabricate a temporary custom abutment to shape the ovate Pontic site. So the nice thing about it is you can either put it in occlusion or take it out of occlusion, depending if you like to do immediate load or if you don't. What that allows you to do is, before the patient walks in, one, it will hold the space, prevent any kind of drifting of the teeth. That's one. Two, the other portion of it is the temporary and the final should match, meaning when the patient comes back in, you shouldn't have to do tissue curettage, which is huge, right? Because that's the worst thing you can do. You spend all this time growing tissue and you go to seed it and it binds on the tissue and you have to just take a burr to it, right? So one of the things we look at when we're talking about the actual abutment is, for the custom abutments, we want at least a minimum thickness between the wall of the actual abutment and the thickness needs to be at least 0.5 millimeters. For a screw retain abutment, we typically try to have you not cantilever more than 6 millimeters from the outside portion sleeve of the tie base, if that makes sense. Okay. Just something to keep in mind, because sometimes, depending on the placement, if it's not ideal, if there's not enough bone, you might have to have a little bit of a cantilever, if that makes sense, to fill in that contact, okay? So, block selection, there are two. 95% of what you will use is going to be L. I think there's one or two. Do you know which ones they are, Storm? There's only that there are S. There's like, I think Astra is the only one, right? Yeah.
And then, like the Camlog.
Yeah, so the Camlog and the Astra EV, those are the only ones that are S. So for the most part, almost everything you guys will use will be an L. And again, that will dictate the diameter of the hole. So if you get the wrong ones, it will not fit onto that tie base. Does that make sense? Medium opacity, we still make these, and that's part of the reason it's on here, because some people still order them because they like the coverage of it for the tie base. Then you have the A16. So the A14 is typically for a custom abutment, or you can do a screw retain crown, and with the A16, you can only do a screw retain crown. Is that correct, Storm?
For the A16, no, you can use it for a custom abutment.
Can you use both for a custom abutment? One of them you can't, correct?
Oh, you're right, yes. You can only use, you're right, A14
For
you can use for custom abutment or a screw retained crown. A16 you can only use for screw retained crown.
Okay, so if you guys got that, so you can, A16 you can only use for screw retained crown. A14 you can use for either if it fits, okay? So the vertical height of a A14 is 14 millimeters. The A stands for abutment. And then the height of the 16 screw retain is 16 millimeters, okay? So again, only available in LT on that one. These are the different shades in the MO and the LT. We switched the A14 to LT. You can order the A14 and LT as well. Some people, again, just really like the MO shades. Here's what the conversion actually looks like on there with the MO and what it basically specifically translates into. Especially if you do need more of a bleach shade, the MOs are very nice if it's a very, very white interior, okay? And again, these are just, again, what they basically more or less translate into. And the MO stands for mean opacity, yes?
And you can get the MO in the 16 size, you said?
No, so the 14s are MO. The 16s only come in LT. Yeah.
You wouldn't want to use it for a screw retained crown. It's pretty good.
Yeah. So the MO. So just so you guys are aware, for those of you doing Cerec chairside, you guys can actually get the MO block. There's a crown MO block, but it's specifically designed to be cut back and layered. There's actually two translucencies you guys don't use chairside. One is HO for high opacity. One's MO. Almost no one uses them unless you're an actual lab technician. Okay.
I do have a question.
Yes.
So this is a topic that gets raised up quite a bit.
It's Storm's fault.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
But custom titanium abutments. Right?
Yep.
So a lot of people are afraid of the opacity of the crown.
Sure.
Showing through the titanium, right?
Yeah.
So usually when you're doing full titanium abutments in the anteriors from canine to canine, what would you kind of recommend?
So in the anterior specifically, depending how thick that tissue is, I think if the tissue is not thick enough to mask out the actual titanium, that typically can be an issue. That's why sometimes we anodize it, or you get something like a gold abutment at that point in order to have it blend better underneath the tissue. If the tissue will block out the tie base, then it's not an issue from the ceramic to the tie base. Does that make sense? Specifically with the HO cement that we make, it is pretty opaque and should mask out the tie base completely. So from an aesthetic portion, if you're worried about the ceramic to the tie base, not an issue. The thickness of the tissue, well, that's something else, right? If that is an issue, then something like gold or maybe an anodized abutment would work better for aesthetic purposes. Okay, cool, good questions. So again, there is an anti-rotational notch on here. It's a little hard to see. I don't know if you guys can see it in there. It's a little cut out. That's why, again, one of the things we typically do is we ask you guys to try it in beforehand. And before you cement it, after you fire it, you basically index it. And I think I have a video showing you this, or I'll show you some of this later. And again, there's a slot, and to make sure it's seated all, you would spin it a little bit. The finishing of this. So one of the things we try to do is use a disc. It goes without saying, try not to break it off. I've had people try to just snap it off and snap off part of the abutment. So if you are removing this, try to use something like a diamond disc to cut it off. Just be careful, because you can cut yourself. Removing the sprue, one of the things we try to do is we try to outline the exterior or the perimeter of the actual sprue with a red pencil to know that you're not going into the abutment, so to speak, that you're not over contouring and taking too much ceramic off when you're removing the sprue. So if you know that you're taking the red off, you're probably taking too much of the ceramic off. And from a fit perspective, that's something that's really, really important with these abutments, right? I don't know if it's changed at all, but typically the sprue defaults into the thickest part of below the height of contour storm, right? The thickest portion of the ceramic below the height of contour.
Where the sprue goes?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna go on. It's gonna basically go, yes.
Yeah.
Below the height of contour, but almost at it.
Yeah.
And the thickest part.
At the thickest part. So just remember that as you're doing this, depending on whether or not it's in the contact or in the buccal or the lingual side of the actual abutment. So again, you can use whatever you want to take the sprue off. This is one of the ones we recommend, but honestly, anything will work. Or also something like the Z-Tech burrs, because we get asked this a lot. But again, you can use whatever you want and whatever you're comfortable using in general. So the try-in. So these are optional ways to do a try-in. Basically what you would do is you would index it like so. So the blue being the index, a little blue marker. You would use Teflon. You could use a little bit of this. This is extra light body impression material. Then you would index it, try it on, take off the excess, take out the cotton pellet, make sure it fits. Then you would screw it down if you're doing this on analog on a model basically. And this is glycerin, and you would use that to kind of try it in, right? So I think most of the time you guys will basically be doing screw retained abutments unless draw is an issue, right? Unless it's like a number 8 or number 9 where the access hole is right on the incisal. Most of the time you guys will probably be doing a screw retained. So again, just an optional step. You don't have to do this. Completing crystallized abutment, we'll do a little bit of this with the hands-on. A few things you will need. There's a smaller crystallization pin than you would use for an abutment because it's just more tapered, so it can go in the access hole. If you don't have that, you can always fill it in with putty and just seat it on the tray. Just make sure at no point is ceramic contacting the tray, okay? So again, staining technique, we typically will tell you to, clearly you don't stain the actual abutment portion. Anything below the height of contour, so to speak, is what you would do on a custom abutment. On a screw retained crown, that's up to you. One of the things we did notice from a biological standpoint is that anything that's polished works better for tissue adhesion, okay? Meaning if there's any part of the abutment that is contacting tissue, you want to make sure it's really, really well polished and that there's no glazed on there, okay? Does that make sense? So if it's contacting tissue, polish it really well, don't glaze it, okay? Just in general, and you'll get better tissue adhesion. Yes?
So wait, where are you glazing on the abutment?
On the abutment, so below the height of contour, if let's say it is an aesthetic issue, and the part that's not contacting tissue, if it is touching tissue, you polish it. If it's not, then you could glaze or stain it to your liking. Or you could just polish the whole thing if you don't see it, meaning if the entire, everything below the height of contour, depending on if it's bone level or how equal gingival it is, you could just polish the entire thing.
Yeah, generally on a custom abutment, because it's going to be subgingival, I wouldn't bother glazing it at all.
Yeah.
The polishing really makes the best. On a screw retained crown, I basically anything below the height of contour, usually like we talked about when we're setting that baseline where you're telling the computer where you want it to go from horizontal to vertical. So basically everything below that is usually touching the tissue. So I just polish that area, and then kind of everything above that I will glaze.
Yeah. So again, you can stain it, and you guys, I think for the most part, if you've owned CAD/CAM for any period of time, the staining is a very normal thing for you guys. You would use a putty like you normally would, and this is the tapered pin. As a general rule, I think there's some photos on here. You don't want the pin protruding through the actual ceramic. You don't want the pin to touch the ceramic, okay? You just want it on the inside within the putty itself, so it should not be contacting ceramic. I've had people do this, and what typically happens is that it will fuse to ceramic and it will break off. So in general, and then that just ruins your fit, right? And again, this doesn't need to be perfect. And if you don't have the tapered pin and you're doing a case, let's say on Monday, you would just create a pillow or a putty platform, fill the internal surface in the hole complete with putty, okay? And again, ultrasonic to remove any residue. Do not air abrade, okay? In general, no aluminum oxide. And again, if you do want to stain, that's where you would do it, below the height of contour, so to speak. You wouldn't stain above that. Again, like Dr. Storm said, probably not something you're going to be doing very typically. So preparing the tie base, you just want to make sure you sandblast it. You just protect the part that connects into the actual implant as best as you can. You want to use something like Monobond Plus or a metal ceramic primer on the external of the actual tie base, and you want to ensure that before you cement it, that you actually have a little foam in the channel of the tie base itself. You want to index it. Again, this is what we mean by indexing, so you know exactly where to line it up so that you're not constantly turning the implant with cement on it. You also want to make sure that when you're done and you're delivering that you etch the internal of the actual abutment with hydrofluoric acid like you normally would. Then you would also, apply the Monobond Plus or the silane into the integrity of that ceramic as well. And then this is a cement that we were talking about from an aesthetic standpoint. I've had this conversation with a lot of doctors. They're like, well, I don't have this. What can I use? The reality is when we test all of these things through FDA, this is a system, meaning the Monobond, the cement, and it's not so much to get you guys to use our product, but we know that this works definitively. We don't know that if you use XYZ manufactured cement that it will work accordingly. That's one. And two, from an aesthetic perspective, you will probably get a different outcome. I had a doctor who I told this and he was like, well, I'm going to try it because I don't have your cement. I was like, okay, go for it. And he did it, and eventually, he had to redo the case because it turned out super gray right at the gingival. And I think I have some photos of this. So this is the MO implant, and I don't know if you guys can see the difference in the H. So one is it was a cement that we stopped carrying. It was called the multi-link hybrid in the medium opacity, and this is a multi-link hybrid abutment in the high opacity. The high opacity completely blocks out the tie base. This is a complete self-cure, meaning you can't hit it with a light. You just have to wait in order for this process to kind of set up. It takes about 7.5, 8 minutes to do it. When you do marry them together, I don't know if we have photos of this. When you do it, you're just going to coat the tie base. You're going to coat the internal of the actual abutment or the screw retained crown itself. You're going to seat it, push it down all the way, take out the cotton pellet. You're going to wait 2 to 3 minutes. Sometimes this could be 4 minutes. You're going to remove the excess. A lot of times we'll tell you get like a little clamp to hold the abutment together. Because you have to hold it because it literally self-cures. So you have to hold it together with a little clamp for 2 to 3 minutes, peel off the excess, something like this. You're going to apply a little bit of glycerin to the margin, so to speak, of this to ensure the oxygen inhibited air layer fully cures. Then you're going to clean it off. You're going to polish. And yeah, there you go. Cementing the crown to the abutment. So this is if you're doing a custom abutment with a crown afterwards, okay? Same process. You would hydrofluoric acid etch the Emax. You would use hydrofluoric acid etch in the crown. You would use a silane component. You would see it, torque it down. You would put some foam in the screw hole. Because you are using silane on both ends, because I get asked this question a lot, you are not using a bonding agent on the abutment surface or the intaglio of the crown. Does that make sense? You would use basically silane on the abutment, silane inside the crown, and the cement in between, okay? Specifically, bonding agent typically only couples to dentition, not ceramics, okay? Then you would just do your cleanup technique, tack your, peel off the excess, floss, and then you have your final restoration. So this is what you need. You would need a true abutment kit if you're going to get started, some scan bodies. There are a few different colors, the hybrid abutment cement and then the abutment blocks depending on what shade and size you need. And the low crystallization trays you guys should already have. Extra small pins, which you guys probably don't have. There's different ordering forms. We guys can help you guys out with that. Do you guys have any questions about this? Sorry, I kind of went through this quickly, but
Yeah, you really hold.
yeah, I tend to speak quickly. Yeah. I mean, I feel like you guys know most of this stuff. A lot of it you guys already know, so I don't want to draw it out for the sake of drawing it out.
So the nice thing when you are firing these things, and whether it goes for a custom abutment or a screw retained crown, you know how we're always very meticulous when we put the putty inside the refractory paste, right, when we're firing something. So we put it inside the Emax and then we put it on the pin and carefully making sure that it's covering the margin, but we don't have it on the outside of the crown and things like that. Well, the nice part is, in general, you've already done your polishing on the intaglio on the bottom of these things, whether it's an abutment or a screw retained crown. So the nice part is you can be a little bit more careless with your putty because it's still going to fire through the putty.
Correct.
You don't have to worry about, you're not glazing all the way down to the margin anyway. So basically when I do these, I use an abundance of putty because the worst mistake you can make is not having enough, having that pin touch the crown, and all of a sudden you have 2 half crowns when you open the
Yeah,
oven,
yeah.
right? So when you do, yeah, go ahead, Dina.
Do you do all your polishing when it's purple before?
Usually,
you apply it?
it's much easier to polish it then. Yeah, yeah, and then just take a nice rubber wheel and polish the bottom of it. Yeah, exactly right. But yeah, so yeah, when you're doing a screw retained crown, same thing. You're really not glazing at all down there. So put a bunch of putty there. You don't have to really be careful about contouring it back, and then you can glaze the top portion of it. Something that Stephen mentioned there, when you go to cement the 2 together, you saw how we drew that nice Sharpie line, one on the crown and one on the tie base. I highly recommend that you do that because it can be very difficult putting the cement on the tie base and all of a sudden now you can't see that notch anymore, and there's cement inside the crown, you can't see that notch, and now you're like trying to fumble around and put it in there, and every time you rotate it, you know, you could be making bubbles or something in there too, so you want to be able to just boom, slot that in there really nicely. Another good trick to use is the tie base has an internal connection feature, right, that's going to go inside the implant. So when we're holding on to that, a good way to cover that up so we don't get cement on it or we don't ruin it when we're sandblasting is to use a little cap from your composite.
Yeah.
Those generally fit really nicely, you know, from the little composite compules. Some of those fit really, really well over that. And they're kind of rubbery, so that's a good trick is you can use that as you can slot that portion in there, so that way when you're sandblasting, you're not accidentally sandblasting the internal connection portion, and you don't have to worry too much about getting cement on there. That's a nice trick. And then you just save those because it's never touching the patient, right?
Fits really well on the Ivor Clark composite.
Yeah. You have to buy a 20 pack though every, the 21st one you get.
Scan body.
Well. Let's see. I think that's about it. I'm trying to think of anything else any mental notes that I made.
Yeah, do you guys have any questions? Sorry, I know I went through that fairly quickly, but I mean, I think most of it's pretty straightforward and you guys probably know most of this information. Any questions about anything, any technical questions? Firing programs will go over. Typically you want to use the longer cycle for these abutments, okay? Yes?
Instead of the hydrofluoric acid, can you use the prime etch and bond one that's all in one?
Yeah, the Monobond Etch and Prime, you can use that. So the Monobond Etch and Prime, for those of you who are not using it, it's basically a polyammonium fluoride acid with a silane component that we created. It has both the acid etch and the silane to it. You can use that. Same steps. You would do 20-second scrub on the abutment, let it sit for 40. Same thing within the crown, rinse that off. Then you're just off to the races, so to speak. Yes.
That Monobond Etch and Prime, if anybody's not using that for your regular stuff, it is actually very, very good as well because it completely eliminates the possibility of over-etching the Emax. Different way that it works, different chemical, so you cannot, basically will not over-etch. If anybody else knows, basically the kiss of death when you are etching, whether it's with 5% red, the red hydrofluoric acid or the 9% yellow, is over-etching. Your bond strength decreases
dramatically,
astronomically. Yeah. It is much better to under-etch than to over-etch.
Yeah.
Significantly different. So that's the nice part about the Etch and Prime is you can't do that.
Yeah.
A lot of times we're not doing that, right? Our auxiliaries, our assistants are doing that, and so sometimes maybe they're not quite as careful as us. Anal, whatever, words like that, yes. And so, you know, the difference between, basically, if you look at the data, I mean, the difference between 20 seconds and 22 seconds with the red etch is huge. It's way bigger than 19 to 20.
Correct.
So, if anything, fudge on the low side if you are using conventional hydrofluoric acids.
Not only that, but I think one of the issues with hydrofluoric acid is it's a little bit of a necessary evil. It's very caustic. It's calcium driven, meaning if your assistants, they get on their skin, over time, it basically will eat away at your bones, basically, because it's calcium driven. You can get TSS over time, toxic shock, if you have too much exposure to it over a lifetime. So it's something that we made this product specifically to remove that from the office because this is non-caustic, basically.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Before we take a break, we're going to take a little coffee break, but I want you to take a look at your models, okay? And I want you to try something for me. On that number 8, is it 8 or 9? 8, right? Yeah, 8. On number 8, I want you to leave the gingiva on, and I want you to take that yellow or that gold GH1 scan post, and I want you to put it in there, okay? And I want you just to test that out. Hand me my mask, please.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so you're gonna, yep, that's the correct one, yeah. Yep, there you go. Okay, so if you push it in there, you can push pretty hard, and you can get it to kind of seat, right? And it feels like it's all the way down. You can even try a GH2, which will be the next one over, the green one. And see, just see the difference there, okay? And then after you do that, I want you to take the gingiva off, and I want you to try that GH1 tie base again, or the scan post, okay?
Can you share the scan?
So I want you to try it in there again, okay? And Jay made these models for me, and it's perfectly illustrates my point of, one, the benefits of having a multiple height scan post, and two, taking a confirmation radiograph. Because with the gingiva on, if you pushed hard enough on that GH1 or even the GH2, it feels like it's fully seated. Well, when you take it off and you look, it's binding on the plastic, which is the bone in this case, okay? So if you put that gold one in there, it doesn't seat all the way. It may feel like it does with the gingiva on, but you'll notice that it's actually hitting the plastic. And so that particular tooth is designed for a GH3, which is blue, okay? So now you can put your gingiva back on, or you can check it before you put the gingiva back on and see what that blue one looks like in there, and you'll see that it clears the bone, or the plastic in this case, very nicely. Okay, so again, this is just really a trap for young players, basically, a trap for people who are new to restoring implants, not taking a check radiograph. Okay, there's no worse feeling than going on cementation day when you go, boy, I love restoring implants. I just screw it in. There's no anesthetic, blah, 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 you know, get my torque wrench out and the tooth looks perfect. And then you take that x-ray like I showed you and it's 3 millimeters away from being fully seated. That sucks. You've wasted time. You know, you're now stressing your relationship with the patient. You've wasted money because that crown and that tie base are toast. They're gone. They're trash now. Or maybe a nice demo. Yeah. So that's perfect. And you can try the GH4. You can try the purple one on there as well and see the difference. And the same goes for that number 14. A GH1 will work on that particular one, but there's going to be a lot of tissue compression. You'll be pushing down a lot, and it's a little bit deep. And that one's made more for a GH2.
So in the clinic, do you just try it in until it seats? Like you try, is there a way to?
Usually I'll measure the gingiva using that chart.
Yeah, but then.
Oh, as far as
If
like.
it binds or something, you just try one up.
Yeah, exactly right. Yep, exactly right. Yeah.
But if you're getting really close to that bone, the crystal side of the bone, and you have an implant that's a little bit subcrystal, you won't know, because if you get really close, you'll be able to seat it and you'll be able to screw it down also.
Yeah.
It'll still be impinging on the crystal side of the bone, so you won't know until you take an x-ray.
Yeah. That you can feel it. So generally how it feels when you're tightening that implant down, when you tighten it into, I mean, it's titanium to titanium, right? So as you tighten it, it doesn't tighten anymore, right? You can't over torque it using your hand. You can't put 35 Newton centimeters unless it, if it's a mini implant, okay. But you try as you might, as hard as you twist on that little screwdriver, you're not going to over torque that implant or that screw, okay? So you'll know if you're tightening it down as tightly as you can with your fingers and it's not moving anymore, it's probably okay. Generally, if it's seating on bone, again, this is like endo, right? You're using that little tactile feedback. If it's seating on bone, you'll feel it. One, the patient's probably going to be a little sensitive because it's probably pushing their tissue out of the way too. Two, as you're seating it down, you'll feel it just gives a little bit. It just is not solid like, basically titanium to flat interconnect. It should be solid, right? If you tighten it a little bit more, it'll move just a teensy bit more, and what you're doing is squishing the bone. Yeah, but you can tell, you can feel it a little bit. But even regardless, I still take a check x-ray. What's up?
And Dr. Hagen, if you could confirm this, we actually don't recommend you guys
Yeah, for the scan, yeah.
So for example, if you're doing the Nobel recommends 35 centimeters, right? But that's only for the final prosthesis, right? You do not want to.
Yeah, hand tight for the scan post is plenty.
If you're using torque, then just torque it at 10 Newton centimeters for the scan post.
So this one gauge at like multiple different angles, but you want to try and make sure you're either going mesial or distal so that you're
Correct, exactly right. Yep, and on this case, you'd probably want to put it here so that the sprue is going to be on the lingual. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so go ahead, once you got that in there, we don't have any screwdrivers, but try that little scan body on top. Try that, the white cap on there, and you can see how there's one notch there, and once you get it lined up, it snaps in. If you try and do it the wrong way, it basically won't snap. It gives you a nice, very nice confirmation snap. And those can be reused. How often do you recommend replacing those?
I get in trouble if I say that
Okay.
legally, but I'd probably say 20 to 30 times.
Okay. Yeah. Technically, they're one-time use.
What was that?
Are they technically one-time use?
No, it's just, the reason why I can't say is because, for example, if you put it in the wrong way.
Oh, yeah. Then you're going to wear it out faster. That makes sense. Yeah. Usually, I kind of keep stock, and again, when you buy the kit like this, there's 4 of them. They're interchangeable. They're not specific to every scan post. So you can use one from the other, from a GH1 on a GH3. It doesn't matter as far as the white caps go. But you'll notice, yeah, that over time the snap won't be quite as nice. It won't snap in as much, and then maybe it's time to replace it or use a different one. Perfect. Right on time. Okay. Any other questions before we take a little coffee break here? We're going to take about 15 minutes, so about 10:45 or so. We'll come back here. We'll do a little bit of design work on the computer. Anything else I can answer? Good. All right.
Well, another episode of True Abutment's interview is underway. I'm Jeff Kraft, and today we're in Sacramento, California. The guys back there? Perfect. We're hanging out here at Core Dental Designs, where we're going to chat with a couple of guys, Chris, who's the CAD/CAM manager, and also Ryan, the owner. Want to find out more about them and how they got started. Chris, how are ya?
Good, how you doing?
Hey, want to find out more about your story, how you became a part of this team here at Core Dental Designs. We'll do that outside when you wrap up here. Sound good? Ryan back that way?
Yes, he is.
All right. Now, Core Dental Designs, one of the most well-respected dental labs in Northern California, but they also service nationwide. Let's find out more. Ryan?
Yes, sir.
Working hard? How you doing?
Good, how you doing?
Good. I want to find out your story. I want to find out how you got started and creating one of the most respected dental labs in Northern California, and also, again, servicing nationwide. Do that outside when you wrap up. Sound good?
Yes, sir. I'll be done in a moment.
All right, sounds good. See you then.
Thank you.
All right, so Brian, Chris, I appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. I want to find out more about you guys as individuals. So how did you get involved in this dental space as a whole? I mean, growing up, is this something that always excited you? Do you have family that was a dentist?
Yeah,
how did it start?
So my father started a lab when I was 1 year old in our garage. And so the dental lab's always been part of me, been part of our family. I'd come in on the weekends with my dad while he was working, and I would fool around, or I'd go and just adventure out in the field. You know, this used to be fields, you know, and I'd go down the creek and fish while he was working. And so I would always see him in the dental laboratory, or we'd come in throughout the years growing up. And I got to a point where I saw an opportunity that it was a ready-made business, and I always wanted to be in some type of business. And I jumped in. I asked my dad, "Can I join the crew?" And he said, "You got to start from the bottom." And so I did. And went through, just like Chris, went through the model department, went through the waxing, saw everything, learned the business, and ended up starting to going out and doing sales for Dad, talking with doctors. And that was kind of like the catapult into me starting to run the lab, because I would hear what the doctors needed and I would bring it back to the lab and implement it.
You're basically born into it.
Yeah, yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah,
Born
yeah.
into it.
Yeah.
Chris, how did you get involved in this industry as a whole? CAD/CAM, I mean, technology in this dental industry has grown so much, so fast. What's your background?
Well, I started in 1999. Had a friend whose dad owned a laboratory, and that's how I got into the lab business and worked my way up from the model room to metal finishing, waxing, and then finally got into the CAD/CAM and have just worked my way to being a manager and just learning everything I can and just trying to stay up with the advancements of everyday dental technology.
How'd you meet this guy?
I applied. I seen
Yeah.
they put had a job offer out there on I forget which job website it was. I just applied.
Okay.
And the rest is history.
Nice.
Almost, what, 5 years almost
Yeah.
I've been here?
Oh, great. Okay, so you've seen the growth of the company, of Core in general, grow. What is your secret to stay on top of it and be on the cutting edge?
Just to not be afraid to try new things, and you just have to dive into it and do it. And
Yeah.
if you're scared, you're not going to advance. So you have to be afraid to fail, and then that's how you can advance in the long run.
Ryan, you've grown the company so fast, partly because of the relationship you have with, tell me about that. Tell me about the Pacific Aesthetic Continuum, how you created that relationship and how it's helped grow the company.
So there are a group of doctors that wanted to go and teach and do hands-on courses, continuing education courses with other doctors, and they needed a laboratory. And so we were able to sit down with Garrett Caldwell and have a good meeting, and he explained it to us. And instantly my sister and I were on board. We knew that this was something that can grow the company, elevate the company to a different aesthetics level. And so we jumped in. We full on went in, and it's been a great avenue for us to grow, to learn, and just be a better lab.
For the True Abutment relationship, tell me about how that got started. How did True Abutment, did they contact you? Did you contact them?
Chris, you contacted them?
Yes, I had, from a past laboratory I was at, I knew about True Abutment, and having failed experiences with other manufacturers, had the best outcome with True Abutment. Cleanest abutments, seamless. I try and get all our doctors True Abutment scan bodies. Therefore we can make a digital model with a true digital analog if need be, or we can get a true tie base to make custom zirconia abutments for them. It's just the seamless, the best. We get the best work from True Abutment. We can tell people take time in what they're doing there,
and we get them in a timely fashion.
That's important.
Yeah.
Yes. Because if we don't have the abutment, then we can't make the case. And it's very cost efficient. That makes our overheads less, so we can make more profit on the crown. So.
Tell me about some of the obstacles you faced over the years and advice to give somebody else getting into opening up their own dental lab.
Well, it's going to take long hours. The biggest thing is to know your doctor, communication with your doctors. If you know what they want, then you can provide it. Just being straightforward with the doctor and saying, hey, what do you need from me to make your life easier as you see the case? And even going in there and seating the case with the doctor to see what they're doing, and you can translate that to what you're doing here at the lab, and just following up, saying, hey, how'd this case go? How'd that case go? Having communication with the doctor makes the doctor feel like you're interested in what they're doing, instead of just making a crown and getting it out the door. So that's a huge thing.
Is the invitation ever there where the dentist says, I'd like you to come in
Oh, yeah.
and sit next to me and I want you to watch kind of what I'm doing so that communication can be stronger?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I said, I went in there, a doctor asked me to come in and seat an implant case on Friday. And we went in there and we sat the case. It went very well. The patient was happy. The patient was excited that I was there as a lab tech. And it makes the doctor look like, hey, they really care about what's going on with this case. And so being there and being a part of the seat is always a good option. Even with our continuing education part of it, being part of the process of prepping, taking impressions, looking over the impressions, talking with the doctor about how they can take a better impression, and then doing the case here, and then going and seating the case with the doctor and seeing what their challenges that they have. It helps. It makes the bond stronger.
The growth of the company over the last 5 years, over the last couple of years, obviously has jumped tremendously. What is the overall goal of Core Dental Designs in your mind?
Well, in my mind, there's no ceiling.
Okay.
I just want to grow and grow just to make it a big quality business, renowned throughout the world. I would love to be the country right now. We're pretty renowned. A lot of people know us, and just keep it going. Keep growing.
Oh, yeah.
Tony!
He's fixing his eyebrows.
Tony, come on!
Everybody, 1, 2, 3, funny pose. 1, 2, 3.
They gave us a gift for the lab. Okay, so it's a Bose speaker. Sounds Oh, we got sandwiches over here. Here's the drone. Oh, that's awesome.
You turns out.
Meat?
No, we're gonna
Chris, Ryan, thanks a lot, you guys. I appreciate you letting me come out and look forward to seeing the growth of the company. It's exciting.
It's very exciting, and I appreciate you guys coming out and giving us some lunch and doing the interview.
Yeah, no problem. All right, guys.
Thank you, sir.
See ya. Well, that is going to do it. Another interview in the books. The question is, who's next? See you guys. Another episode of True Abutment's interview coming right at ya. I'm Jeff Kraft, and this time we're coming from Renton, Washington, which is just outside of Seattle. We're going to be chatting with Alan Wan, owner of Moriyoshi. You ready? Good. Come on. Now, the name Moriyoshi has been on the door since 1994, but Mr. Moriyoshi doesn't own the company anymore. Alan Wan, he was basically an apprentice. He decided to go ahead and buy the company from Mr. Moriyoshi. Did that about 6 years ago. I want to find out how it's all been going. Alan?
Hey, Jeff. Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you as well. What are you working on here?
I'm just working on a big case, as we have a lot of big cases here.
Working hands-on. I love it. I love
came
it.
in the perfect timing. It's just nice weather.
It was beautiful weather
it is,
outside.
it is.
Can we go outside now?
Let's go outside.
Okay, great. Come on out. So I want to go way back to when you were 20 years old.
Yes.
And you were trying to figure out what to do with your life.
Yes.
I'm 43. I'm still trying to figure it out. But at 20 years old, you were trying to figure out what industry you wanted to go into. What brought you to the dental industry, dental lab industry?
So it started with my brother getting into dental school.
Okay.
At that time, my older brother. And he suggested me to see if I'm gonna be liking, working in a lab.
Okay.
So I stepped into a small lab that time. It was a 2000 in the spring.
Okay.
And then I was able to get a small, quick tour by this owner. It was like 2 people, small lab. And I knew as soon as I stepped in there, I knew I'm gonna be doing this for the rest of my life. So that's how it started.
What was it about it right when you walked in, you knew? What was it that you liked about it?
I always liked enjoying anything like the Legos, playing with my hands when I was young. So that's how it brought me to here. whatever they've been doing, even I didn't know what they're doing, it just seems pretty fun to me.
Okay.
And I know that I can do really good at this. And here we are today, so.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Now let's go to the introduction to Moriyoshi. What drew you to Moriyoshi? Had you heard about him before? What was that driving force towards his lab?
So after working a year at that small lab, I was eager to look for somebody who's really good at this, because there's a lot of really different levels, with the skills on this industry. So I knew there was a master ceramist, master technician, Mr. Moriyoshi. It was an hour driving from where I lived at that time. But so I came here driving 1 hour, and he was the man I was looking for. And he was actually an instructor back in Japan. And then he came here in his 40s and established this lab in 1994.
And what was it about him that you just wanted to emulate?
One thing I like working for Mr. Moriyoshi is that his skills. He was really careful from start to finish. Like, I have seen other labs where the owner does not really work, they don't really get involved in the process, but he was always there from start to finish. And that's what it got hooked me to it. And he's the one who taught me over the years, pretty much from start to finish. Yeah.
Okay, so he was looking to retire. He was looking to move on and next chapter in his life, and he was looking for somebody to take over. And he asked you. But the first time he asked you, you said, no, I don't think I'm the right person to do that. I've got no money. So yeah, that was put on the back burner, right?
So going back to 2016, he told everybody that he wanted to retire and settle back in Japan, where he came from. So he started looking for somebody to follow his tradition and work ethics. That's how it started. He was looking for somebody, and surprisingly, he came to me and suggested me to take over the lab, which was a little surprise at first.
It's intimidating just to get that question asked.
It is, but at the same time, I have seen Mr. Moriyoshi working so hard, achieving his American dream, and the way he treats us, the attitude he has, I didn't know I'm gonna be like him. So although that's why I kind of turned it down at first, and then he came back to me. After a few months later, he said, Alan, I know you're doing a good job, so I will help you with any financing matters. So I accepted. That's how my story began from that point. So.
And now the business is doing great. Your wife works in the office as well. Tell me about some of the individuals that have been there from the very beginning since with Mr. Moriyoshi as well.
Yes. So I had a pretty good people to start with. That's number one for me, for my success, I have to say. And I give full credit to those who's been here since day one for me. And actually, they've been here about 27 years. Especially two members, they've been there since the beginning of Moriyoshi Lab back in 1994. So I was getting so much help from them. They would stay late if there's anything I need at the lab. So they didn't just come here and work 8 hours and just go home. They were actually there from the beginning. So I feel really blessed to have them. And I'm still blessed that I have them now. I know they're gonna retire soon, but I cannot say thank you enough, to those two people who's been here with me.
Well, you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with, and it sounds like those two individuals. What are their names?
Their name is Sam.
Sam?
And the other guy name is Mel.
Okay. And so they've been around for 27 years working with Mr. Moriyoshi. Do you feel like you've made Mr. Moriyoshi proud, and those two individuals that have been there, are they proud to work underneath you?
I think so. I mean, they're still here with me at this, today.
Yeah.
I was really scared at first beginning of my first year because I really didn't know anything about the business side. And plus, I didn't know I'm gonna be good as Mr. Moriyoshi. So that's why I had to work double than Mr. Moriyoshi, at least to prove them that I'm working hard for them. So I think I did a pretty good job. And here we are today. We had grown up so well than before. And I'm sure if Moriyoshi sees me today, he will be very proud of us.
How did True Abutment and Moriyoshi, how did it come together?
As I started working on a big cases, I definitely need some help on an implant. So I was looking for a milling center who can help me that on cases, that I can utilize on a big cases. So I found True Abutment and their technique with the angle screw channel, ASC abutment. That did help with my career for sure. So all of my clients loved it. They like using, True Abutment. So now I'm stuck with them. So,
yeah. You're stuck with them and they're stuck with you.
Yes.
What's been your favorite thing about owning a business?
Favorite thing, I have a 22 months little princess. We never really planned having a baby. And after I owned the business, I was feeling a little comfortable with the financing and all that. So we have now 22 months.
Oh, just sorry, Jay. Do you have a scan post list? The list that I was showing, or something like that, like which one to use?
Oh yeah.
Do you guys work with MIS?
Only the C1 and the 7s, which is compatible with, I believe, the Zimmers.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. Perfect. Yeah, so look, it's not on here, but MIS is definitely the same as, it is Zimmer, huh?
MIS C4 and
7
yeah.
is the same as Zimmer.
Yeah.
The C1?
C1.
C1, okay.
Yes.
C1 and 7. Yeah. Yeah, so it should be okay. Yeah, so if you saw how Jay got to that there, just go to trueabutment.com.
Okay.
Left side, scroll down, and there's Cerec Solutions right here. And then you can go ahead and use the catalog right here, and you'll get this. And this is all the information. That's that chart that I was referencing earlier. And then also, here's the gingival heights, like I was talking about before too.
So guys, your right screen is actually a duplicate of Dr. Hagen's screen, so don't touch the right screen. Your screen is
All right, so spend a few moments here. So everybody's screen should look like this, okay? So we've got our implant in here, and so in this particular case, we're designing a number 14, okay? So you can follow along with me. It's already selected just because I exported this case from my machine, but how you'll get to it is on your screen on the left side, you're gonna choose implant right here. So we've got single crown, bridge, implant, and surgical guide planning. So implant right here. For this particular case, and this is actually the same case that's on your model. So if we look at that, where the implant was placed, we did, or our surgeon did, or somebody did a pretty good job. It looks like it's nicely aligned. So I think we'll be fine doing a screw retain crown. Okay. Here, we're just going to do, it's a regular case, biogeneric individual. It's automatically going to select the material for us here, but if you want to look what there is, Vita has an Anamic IS implant block. Well, if we go back to Ivoclar, there's Emax or there's TelioCAD. And a little side note as far as TelioCAD goes. So TelioCAD is a temporary block, okay? Works really, really well for tissue forming. I have 2 of them in process right now, both of them number 9s. Both placed by oral surgeons who used very small healing caps, healing abutments, so thank you for that. One of them I used a GH4 to scan, right, and there's no papilla whatsoever to speak of. The implant and the healing the abutment is the same size as the implant, which is like a 3.5. I mean, it would look horrible to have a crown there. So I scanned it. I milled a Telio CAD screw retained crown. Now in an anterior, it's very common. The screw hole is coming straight out the facial, or almost out the incisal edge, but just to the facial of that. But it's fine because this is basically, it's a PMMA block, so we can bond to composite to it. So what I did was I chose, patient luckily was an A2, so I bought a tie base, I bought a GH4 tie base, I bonded the Telio CAD to it. There's a little different process, use the same HO cement that Stephen was talking about. There's just a different primer for the Telio because it's acrylic, not ceramic. And then we bond that on there. Okay, the screw hole's coming out the facial. Again, this is gonna be a temporary. So I put it in, and then you can use composite, and composite bonds and blends very well with it on the facial. And then the nice part about that, as we're doing our tissue forming, I can add composite to it and push that tissue down and shape that tissue as I need to. So I have the patient come back every 2 weeks or so. He just came back last week, and the tissue's still forming, so I didn't do anything. I'll see him again in 2 weeks, and as that papilla starts to form, I'll take the crown off again. I'll bond a little bit of composite around the outside of it just to push that tissue out just a little bit more and get it to grow, open that space up and get it to grow down a little bit more. And it's very nice, bond easily to it and adjust it very easily. So that's a good tool to have in your tool bag there. So in this case, we're just gonna use Emax, okay? So Emax CAD abutment. Don't worry about the device because we're not milling it today. As far as the tie base goes, so this is where we use that chart again. So they're all located here in Dentsply Sirona Others, okay? And now we can find our list. So remember, if you remember from before, we're looking for an NBA 5.0. So we keep going down, we look here for it here, it's no bells near the bottom, so NBA 5.0. Now it's going to ask us, what are you going to scan with? Are you going to scan with a tie base or a scan post? We're doing it the correct way, so we're going to use a scan post, and it's automatically going to choose the scan post for us because it corresponds to the tie base that we're using. So normally, right now, you would click. But so just like we talked about before, this is number 14 in this case. So I would move forward to acquisition. We would have 4 catalogs. We would have an upper jaw, a lower jaw, a buccal, and then we'd have scan post upper. So in this case, I would scan the lower arch first. I would take my buccal bite. I would take off the healing cap, scan my upper arch without the healing cap on there, and then I would put it in the scan post, take my x-ray, and take my scan body, or my scan post scan, okay? So we did that already, so we'll move forward here, okay? Oh yes, yeah, what's that?
When you're choosing this scan body and scan post, you don't have to say which height it is.
No, so that's the beauty of the system is you're basically, true abutment is essentially tricking the Cerecs, okay? So you don't tell it GH1, GH4, whatever you're using, just as long as you correspond the scan post you're using to the tie base that you use, okay? The machine is none the wiser, basically. So the downside of that is you can't use a GH4 scan post and then go, uh-oh, I want to use a GH2 tie base. You can't do that. You can't change it within the software. You have to use like for like. Now, if you do get in a position like that and for some reason the patient can't come back in or something like that, you could send it to True Abutment to make a custom abutment and things like that, and they internally can change that. But you can't do it yourself on the software. All right, so let's jump to the model phase here. So just like normal here, I wouldn't touch too much with this, but we're going to set our model axis, right? So everything is exactly the same there. Trim area. In this particular case, sometimes you will trim, sometimes you won't. And where the trimming, we're used to not trimming at all on our normal chair side software. But what the trimming does, remember how I told you that baseline is going to be where it turns horizontal to vertical. If you trim it in the correct spot, that's where it's going to put that transition for you, okay? So what I like to do is basically I'll trim it somewhere around here. That's about where I want that transition to be, Okay, and I'll do the same thing on the other side. You don't have to do this, but it can help. Okay, something like that. I don't know if you guys ever have this happen, but sometimes when you trim it, it highlights the wrong part like this. All you have to do is go to the part that you want, double click it, and it'll transition to that other part. That's true for anything. Okay, and then you're going to move forward. We're going to make sure, we're going to go ahead and click the scan body head and make sure that it's selected here. So you can double click it. Generally, if you are scanning and the machine recognizes it, this is where it's going to drop you. So after you scan and click next, it's pretty much going to take you right here. And this is the part where that patient is still laying down at this point, okay? You can always go back, you can trim it later, you can set the model axis later, but this is what you want to see right here before that patient leaves your office, okay? Because sometimes what it'll look like if you didn't do a good job of scanning that scan post is there'll be nothing here. Maybe you'll see a little bit of this, or it'll have half or all of this white part cut off because it thought it was part of the tongue or the lip, and there's no salvaging it. You have to rescan. There's no way around it, okay? So great, looks good. We'll move forward to edit baseline. And you can see here, we can turn on our scan body if we want to see the other teeth. But this looks pretty good, okay? I'm pretty happy with that. You can also just turn off trim model if you want. You can adjust this line if you wanted to. You can double click it and redraw it, so you can try that if you want. And if we turn off model base, we can look at it from the underside as well and see how that looks. Overall, I would say the machine did a pretty good job here. So I'm just going to go ahead and move forward and have it propose me a crown. Good. Okay. Now, if you, let's say we'll go back here and we'll say that sometimes what happens is this is really rotated. Okay, so say maybe number 15 is not really in the best spot. And number 14 kind of needs, maybe the arch form is really, it's not a nice shape. Maybe it collapses a little bit, or maybe it goes in a little bit at the end there. What you'll do is if this tooth is rotated like, you know, clockwise or counterclockwise, the best way to fix that rather than redrawing the line is to actually go back to the model axis step and adjust the model axis, okay? So watch what happens. So just look at my screen, and as I do this, right, I'm going to move it like that. I'm going to go back to edit baseline and see how that rotated now. So as I rotated the model, now this crown is going to come out kind of sideways, okay? If we go back to model axis and we fix that, or we take it, well, let's go the other way. Let's go a little bit further. Let's do that. And we go back here, and now we do it again. So now we're too far the other way. So that's a really good way. Rather than, sometimes it can be very difficult to redraw this line because the gingiva gets in the way. So if it's very far off, or the shape of it looks pretty good, but it's just not centered or not rotated correctly, the best way is to go back into the model axis and modify that. And sometimes it takes a little bit of trial and error. You go back and forth, something like that. That looks pretty reasonable.
So how come there's only the line on the facial?
It's still there. So if we look from underneath, it's there on the lingual. It's just down below the tissue. Not a huge deal. You can also change this to slightly transparent to be able to see that. And I think that's really the biggest change between implants and regular is you're using a lot more transparency things because a lot of it is happening below the gum line. So if you can't see a line, and it usually toggles the model base on. So if you want to look at it from the underside, you just uncheck that, and now you can look from the bottom through to the top. All right, so that looks pretty good. Let's go through with our design again. And depending on the tissue, really the quality of your proposal depends on how good the underside of the tissue looks. So you can see right here how it didn't want to make that distal contact, okay? And that's because, let's do this. That's because we have a stock healing abutment here, and the tissue is really nice, but we don't really have a good emergence. So you'll notice when you have cases like this without a custom healer or without a really large healing abutment, you'll have to do a little bit more work in your design phase to get it to look good, okay? And that's just simply because right here, the reason it looks bad is because it's seeing that tissue as like a contact, right? So it's trying to put itself in contact with the tissue instead of making it all the way to the neighboring tooth. And sometimes fiddling with your model axis and things like that will fix it as well. Like I'm looking at some of your screens right now and your proposal looks better than mine. So it's sometimes just as simple as modifying the model axis a little bit. But generally, you know, looking at this proposal, okay, so let's turn this back on. How would we fix this, okay? All the tools are still there. So when I look at this, I would probably go shape anatomical, and I would bring this distal out a little bit, okay? We can just bring this whole side out. Alternatively, you can go back and use these morphology and positioning tools as well. Like, oh, this looks pretty good. It's maybe a little rotated. And we can use the scale tool and modify this, okay? This is getting a little bit more advanced Cerec training now, but these really help in the implant space. And let's see what that does for us. That's a little bit better. Now we've got a contact again. Probably bulk this out just a little bit more and a little bit more here. Okay, but anyway, you guys know how to use the Cerec tools. You can customize that to your heart's content. So say we did everything, right? We're happy with the fissure. We're happy with the occlusion. Contours look good. Whatever. I'm not going to waste time doing that stuff right now. We'll go through and do our contacts. Blah blah blah. So now the last step that we have to worry about is this tissue pressure. Again, okay. So again, this is the main difference between your traditional single unit tooth-borne crowns and an implant crown, is we've got to worry about that underside. So you can see here we had already toggled, we turned off that model base so we can see underneath it, right? We can see what's going on underneath here. And we can use our little trick here where we're going to take this restoration slider and we're going to bring that down a little bit. And now we can see where that tissue is through that crown. And generally what I'll use here is the smooth tool. And I'm going to go in and just contour that back. Now, how much tissue pressure you want to place on an implant crown, that's not Cerec specific, that's you specific, how much your personal preference is. And you'll have to do a little bit of trial and error to figure out where you're happy. I would say generally what I like is as long as I can get that tissue, you can mess with the strength and everything like that here as well. Sometimes when we're working with implants, we use a little bit higher strength than you're used to. As far as normal crowns go. But I would say what I like is I have the restoration coming through the gingiva just a little bit, and I really try and get that shape idealized, okay? And what we're looking for is if we take this upper jaw off, and sometimes it can help if you take the contacts off too, so it gets rid of that red. So what I want is an S-curve. I want a little bit, I want it to be just slightly concave inside of there to give my tissue a place to adapt to. So it should come out of the implant, come out just like this, and then it's going to S-curve up right to the crown. Okay, so a little bit concave where it's touching the tissue, and then it's going to S-curve nicely up to the crown. So we can look at it inside profile. To me, this looks maybe just a little bit flat. So sometimes I'll take that, or sometimes you have to give it a little hit with the remove tool just to make that little bit of concavity there. And now you can see how we've got this. This is what I want right here. It's a very nice shape. And if we toggle our jaw back on, you can see we still have nice contact there with the tissue. And I would say this I would be happy with right about here. That's going to be just a moderate amount of contact with the tissue. You'll probably get a little bit of blanching when you seat that. And what I like when I seat my restoration is I like a little bit of blanching as I'm tightening it down. And then by the time my usual workflow is I'll tighten the crown down, okay? I take it to hand tight. I get up, take a confirmation radiograph again just to make sure that that is seated all the way. And then I take it to final torque. I'll wait about 5 minutes and re-torque it just to make sure again. And by the time I'm done with all of that, usually the blanching is gone, okay? That is my ideal tissue pressure, okay? And again, that is clinician specific. That just depends on what you like, but that's how I like to do it. So call that, by the time we do all of that, maybe it's 7 or 8 minutes, okay? And the blanching is gone. That's what I like. And for me, in that particular case, that's what that looks like to me, okay? And that's, again, it just takes a little bit of doing how it works in your hands. But you can see if we look here, and we turn this on a little bit less, it's still, the restoration is still coming through the tissue, but you can see it's not very thick, okay? It's not very thick there. Something like this is probably too thick, okay? In my hands at least, okay? Or especially over here on the lingual, I would bring this back significantly, okay? And so usually, like I said, I do most of my work with the smooth tool. With the remove tool, it tends to make things just too rough. So I try and bring everything back with the smooth tool, get it to a place where I like it, and this is gonna make it a nice flat angle, okay? And then I'll hit it a couple of times with that remove tool just to make that nice little S curve, that little convex or concave curvature, okay? So this looks pretty nice, and I think once I bring this back a little bit, just something like that. And then sometimes I'll go again with the smooth tool just to make sure we didn't make that too dimpled. And you can see how we've got that nice S-curve anatomy there. And sometimes you'll have to go back where that transition zone is up here and smooth that out. That's it. This is exactly the profile we want right here. Any questions? It's definitely a little bit more tool heavy than your traditional crowns where the machine is doing most of the work for you. There's a little bit more work to do with these as far as this goes, but it's very nice to be able to fully customize it.
So this kind of corner here be a little too...
Yep, exactly. So I would go through and I would hit that with the smooth tool. I would probably turn your smooth tool strength up maybe to like 60 or 70%. That way you're not sitting there forever. And then you can turn, I would actually turn your upper jaw back to full 100%. Click this box right here, the left one, yep. And now you can turn your restoration down a little bit. Oh yeah, that's another one. If anybody, you guys seem like you're pretty long-time Cerec users, but if you ever see this display objects like this and you're like, wait, how do I turn down the restoration opacity? Right here, generally when you first use your machine, all of these menus come collapsed, okay? And that's what this button right here means. So if you click this, there's all your options, okay? Same thing with here. The form tool, we only had the shape and things like that, but now if we click that, we've got a lot more. Okay, same thing here, so. Any questions? How are we looking? Good? Yeah, so go the other way. Turn this back up all the way, and now lower this one. That way you can see your tissue through it. Yep, exactly. Nice, so I would probably take the smooth tool on that lingual, and I would round that pretty safely, because see how it's like a flat shelf like that? So I would just smooth that transition, and same thing on the buckle a little bit more. And again, if we had used a custom healer there, where the tissue was really nice, our proposal would be much nicer.
So kind of get rid of that L shape.
Correct, exactly right. So we want it to be a really nice, smooth contour like that, not a shelf. Sure. And again, that goes with saying, like what Stephen was saying earlier, to try and avoid over a 6mm cantilever of unsupported Emax. So right, if it comes out of the implant and it's just a big flat thing like this, all that is unsupported ceramic. So it's prone to more fracture, basically. Good? No problems? Everything's good? Easy peasy. Yeah, that looks great. Very nice. Yeah, and kind of once you get the flow down of what tools to use in what order, it's not really a big deal.
If you make it that temporary kind of a temporary crown,
Mm-hmm.
like a gum former.
Yeah.
What are you charging for that? Are you charging that?
I don't charge for it.
Some part of the whole implant package.
Yeah, I'm a pushover. So usually what I'll do when I don't do it for posteriors, right? But in the anterior, I generally, I mean, it takes time, right? So I'll tell the patient, I mean, what does it cost me? It costs me a tie base is like $60. The block is like $60. Okay, it costs me $120, you know, plus a few appointments here and there, but they're pretty quick. So maybe it costs me 2 hours of chair time over the full amount of, you know, eight weeks or something like that, and $120. That's worth it to me to have a really nice result. So usually what I'll tell the patient is I say, hey, look at your teeth, and I say, look at these other teeth, you know, your permanent, your normal teeth, and see how there's nice gum between the teeth, right? See how there's not a big black space there. Well, see how now where that implant is, how it's very, very flat there. We don't have these things called papilla there. And I say, what happens is when there's no tooth there, there's nothing for the gums to grow on. They grow like a vine. So I would like to rebuild those for you, but it takes a little bit of time. So I have two options for you. One, I can take the normal scan today and we can restore it. If you're in a hurry, I can give you your tooth in 2 weeks and be done with it, okay? But if you'll give me a little bit of time, sometimes it can take up to 2 months. I would love to contour that a little bit more. It's a few appointments extra, but I think the result will be nicer. And I just give them the option, and then they go, oh, that sounds, I mean, that's okay. And they go, does it cost more? You know, and I go, no, I just do it as part of my, you know, part of my fee. And so that's what I do. I mean, basically we're a fee-for-service office now, so I'm comfortable doing that. You know, if I was doing it for network rates, I would probably charge extra because, yeah, it's going to be pretty significant. But yeah, it really works well. I would say the hard part with those is, so with PrimeScan and the 5.0 software, the FDA changed their regulations. So all the combinations that we have available for EMAX are not necessarily available for TeleoCAD, is the trouble. So like Straumann you can use, some of the other ones, Nobel you can't, things like that. So sometimes you have to rely on the lab side to do that conversion for you, and they can do that. They can make it for you. But it just became very convoluted because in the past with the 4.0 software and 4.6, et cetera, the way that the FDA worked as far as, we're going way off topic now, by the way, but the way that the FDA worked is it was all piecemeal. So the scanner was approved for the implants, and then the tie base was approved for the implants, right? And they could all happen separately. And then what happened with the 5.0 software, and there was a really big, everybody was pissed when the 5.0 came out because our implant options were very low. There was hardly anything available, and it was because the FDA changed the way that they regulated it, and now it had to be a full workflow. So the scanner had to be validated with the scan post, had to be valid. You couldn't combine all these individual pieces. Everything had to work under one roof, and so they had to recertify everything. So that's the troublesome part with that. So sometimes when you're doing those custom tissue formers, if your implant is not supported, then you have to rely a little bit on the lab. But again, it's a temporary block. It's not hugely expensive. And it's worth it. I mean, the results you get are phenomenal. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing, I just hate staring at this. There's a few where the patient wouldn't let me do it. And, you know, luckily they had like a low lip line or something, but I still see it. Right? It's just like, oh, God, I just can't stand that black triangle. Anyway. Okay, so after we finish with our design, it's all very easy after this. We jump over to manufacture. This is a big one, okay? So if we look right here, you see this error that I got, okay? And again, this is FDA-wise. So in the past, in the 4.6 software, we could violate minimal thickness, okay, and still make it. That is not kosher, that is not cool anymore, okay? So the machine will not let you mill if you're violating the minimal thickness, okay? It won't let you do it, okay? So if I say, so basically it's saying, it doesn't meet the minimal thickness requirement, do you want me to try and fix it, okay? And if I say no, it's just gonna loop me back to the design side and say, well, sorry, you're out of luck, okay? So when you see an error like that, you have to look where the minimal thickness is, okay? I've got this one little spot. Sometimes you won't even see it, okay? If the minimal thickness is so small, and it usually happens right there. It usually happens right at the connection because that's going to be the thinnest part because everything branches off from there. Sometimes there's little islands that are, maybe if you zoomed in 100 times you could see it, but the computer doesn't care, it knows it. So if you don't see anything, you can usually click yes and it'll fix it and you probably won't even notice a difference, okay? If I clicked yes in this situation, well, let's try it. It'll bulk out that little area, but it'll probably do a really good job and we won't even notice it. So I'll say yes, and let's see what it does. Looks fine, okay? Now, if you have really large areas of minimal thickness issues, okay? So let's purposefully do that. Okay, so we got our little spot there. I'm just gonna go in here with my shape tool and I'm gonna make a really big area of minimal thickness, something like that. And say maybe you were accidentally designing with this off and you didn't notice it. And you say, yeah, fix it for me, please. Actually, did a pretty good job. Sometimes it'll give you a crazy proposal, okay? It'll like make spikes, it'll completely wreck your design, okay? And when you go back to that, there's no undo, okay? So you're starting over. So let me see, I want to see if I can, probably will do a great job and never do that to me, but I just want to see if I can induce it, okay? Still does a pretty good job. But anyway, sometimes if it's a really large area, it'll have a big error and it'll create spikes and things like that. So in general, if your minimal thickness area is anything larger than a little tiny band, fix it yourself, okay? Go back to the design screen and bulk it out a little bit to get rid of that minimal thickness bubble and then move forward. If you only have little dots after that, you can click yes, it'll be fine. But if it's a really large area, don't chance it because you could just destroy all of the work that you just did. And like I said, there's no undo button. So you're going back and just starting your design over again after that, okay? So now we've got it. This is a beautiful looking crown here. So what we'll do is normally you would have your milling unit right here. And there's your sprue position, like I said. So it's going to be 90 degrees to where our notch is. If we turn off our restoration, you can see the notch there. Okay, 90 degrees clockwise to it. And if you look in the tools section, we can't modify. We can't move the sprue, okay? Not even an option. So all you do is click start and mill away. That's it. Any questions on that? Exactly. So if you go and turn off restoration on the right side, you can see, and you look to the side. Yep. See, there you can see the notch. Yep. So it's always 90. It's actually exactly 90 degrees. Doesn't change. All right. So let's see here.
Will it ever put the screw like subgingival?
It's always going to be on the height of contour. Oh. And the reason for that is, if you think about how the sprue is going to go face the back of the machine, right? And you've got two burrs milling like this. So it can't put the sprue way on the wrong side because how would it hold onto the sprue when you're milling? You'd be milling past the sprue. So it's always going to be at the largest part of the crown. All right, so we're going to take a couple minutes. We're going to migrate back to the other room. And Steven's going to do a hands-on stain and glaze session. We're going to fire those crowns. So I actually have a number 14 that is this particular crown that we just designed. Okay, so you're going to stain and glaze them. He's going to show you all that stuff. We'll fire them. And then after they're done firing, while it's firing, we'll have a little Q&A session of anything, whether it's Cerec related or other stuff. And then we'll submit them to the tie base. So take a couple minutes while they move the cameras, and we'll sneak back over to the other room. Great job, everybody.
Welcome to another episode of True Abutment's Interview. I'm Jeff Kraft, and on this episode, we're in Olympia, Washington, which is about an hour south of Seattle. Now, we've been all over the country meeting owners of small labs and big labs. This episode, it's a pretty big lab. Let's go inside. So now the owner, Bob, started this over 30 years ago, and he embraced technology from the very beginning. But then he hired a guy named Paul that took it to a whole nother level. Speaking of, here's Paul here. Paul?
Hey Jeff, how's it going?
How you
Welcome
doing, bud?
Hey, come on back, let's see Bob.
Okay, perfect. Can't wait to talk to you about how you got started with Bob as well. Oh, there is the man himself.
Hey,
Bob
Jeff, how you
Zimick,
doing?
how are you?
Welcome
nice
to
meet
Zinmick
you.
Lab.
I want to find out more about you guys, how you came together, and how you got started in this industry. I'm in the lobby. I'll meet you guys there. I want to find out all about you guys. First, Bob, I want to dive back to where this all started. I know a little bit about you, and I know that your whole goal, your entire life, is you want to make people feel good. You want to help them feel good about themselves and look good. But how did that start? Where did you get that internal feeling that's what you want to do to give back?
Actually, I got my training in the United States Air Force. So I went in the Air Force open general, and which I could have been a cook or whatever, but after the aptitude test on the 6th day of training, and they tell you what you're going to be. And they said, you're going to be a dental lab technician. And I said, what is that? So I looked it up in the manual, and it said, making teeth. And from that point, I knew that's what I wanted to do, so I could just help people feel good about, their appearance. So I went to basic training, then got transferred over to Okinawa. And on Kadena Air Force Base in Okinawa, I was able to get trained by Robert Rudd and Keith Smith, both prosthodontic doctors over there. So I got some really, really good training. And then I went to Travis Air Force Base for 2 years. It gave me a great experience as far as working with the dentist, training the dentist, and kind of knowing what each dentist wanted. So it was a great experience.
So Paul, as a general manager, Bob was told what he was going to do from the Air Force. How did you get involved in this crazy world of the dental lab industry?
Well, I've always really been into technology and computers, and at one time I decided to become an AutoCAD drafter. So I was going to design custom homes and design and build my own custom homes. As the economy kind of took a downturn, I went back to the community college where I had got my college degree for AutoCAD drafting and was working in the program there, where Bob had placed an ad looking to see if he could take somebody with a technology skill and teach him the dental side. So I came on with Zinmick early on with technology in mind and helped go down this digital path that we're on today.
And how long ago was that when you answered that ad?
That would be going on 12 years now.
So over the last 12 years, Bob, the imagery and the technology moving forward to where it is now, you adopted this a long time ago. What brought you to that point? Because it takes many people in the dental lab or just the dental offices much longer to accept that.
Yeah. Well, it's been kind of a long road. We started early on, like in around I think it was 2003, 2004. It's when the Lava chairside or the chairside oral scanner from 3M came out, COS, and the first night that it was available on the West Coast, I had seven of my doctors, sign up to buy a digital scanner. So we had a pretty good acceptance of digital scanners, and we were actually milling CNC milling out lava crowns. So it was kind of moving in that direction, and then we wanted to find somebody like with Paul's talent. We knew it was going to be computer, digital, milling. So we're kind of putting our feelers out for a different type of technician, somebody that could come in and run the machines. And thankfully, Paul signed up one day because it's kind of funny because he's been my IT guy, my computer guy. He's had all these names, but now he is the general manager, and he's been doing a phenomenal job.
How did you get from a 3-person ran company to where you're over 80 in this office here? Let's go back to that point first.
It's been kind of like in stages. I think the biggest thing is when we started doing our own milling of crowns. So we were kind of, there was a few labs in the Northwest, and we were kind of like the digital lab. But we always kept focus on quality, margin integrity, contours, contact, occlusion. things that, help the doctors as far as time savings when they put that crown in the patient's mouth, but also, the aesthetic quality of it too. So, I mean, you can mill out CNC crowns, but if it doesn't match the mouth, then we're out of luck. But I think that it's just hiring the right people on, getting them trained well, and then, taking steps and moving up in different stages. And there's been sometimes where, there's been a little bit more of an explosion as far as, we'll take 10, 15 people on at a time, and then it kind of settles down a little bit. We kind of get trained and kind of get things figured out. But yeah, I think we're at 92 now, right?
92.
92.
Wow.
Yeah.
Bob, did you ever expect the company to grow to where it is now? In your wildest dreams, did you think, I'm going to have almost 100 people, a family working out of the same building, all with the same common goal? Did that ever cross your mind?
No, I think, I've been around a long time. You can see all my gray hair, but I think at one time, Jim Glidewell had put a thing out that, his company was doing, and this is way back. It was like a $4 million company a year, and I was talking to one of my buddies, and I'm like, you know what, I would like to get there. and yeah, it's surpassed. I think the other thing too is Paul was at the time the CAD manager, but we got each other as far as trying to push the ball forward, as new techniques, new settings, new parameters. So we really worked hard to dial that stuff in. And at that point in time, being the owner of the dental lab, I was still at the bench. So what my job would be is to handle the tough calls, but also handle the tough impressions. So I was under a microscope, sometimes trimming upwards of 150 dies a day myself, plus doing the other stuff. And then Paul would walk by my desk and he'd be like, hey, look at this. And I'd be like, oh, I want that. And so anyway, it took about a year or two, and then we decided to basically only work with doctors with digital scanners. So that really pushed us over the edge. And we did that 8 months before COVID hit. I was talking to a lot of people in the industry, and some were like, yeah, that's a real ballsy move, and some were like, dude, you're an idiot. but I knew what we wanted. Both Paul and I knew that's where we wanted to go. So we took the gamble, and we lost some pretty big accounts. But as once we moved into it, I would say maybe like 25% kind of came along, bought scanners. We kind of worked with them, but then it just allowed us to grow from across the country. Now we're in like 45 states. And a lot of our growth just comes from, doctors having a great experience with what we're doing digitally. They pass it along to their study club friends, or they, talk to a doctor and they buy a scanner. Maybe it's a different scanner, and they say, hey, use ZMIC because they have a whole digital, program that'll help you get up and running with it.
So for the dental labs, owners that are coming up and maybe they're going through the Air Force, maybe they've heard of the industry, they want to be, maybe not go through the schooling as opening a dentist office. Maybe they're transferring from a dentist going into a lab. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think I was thinking about this morning, and I think that, what I would say is, learn the fundamentals of dental lab technology, and then transition that into design, computer-aided stuff that we're doing. Just having the ability to kind of gain that knowledge of the fundamentals. And sometimes when I see people come in, it takes a little bit longer than like how I started out. I think it's the Air Force manual. I can't remember the name of it, but it takes you through, facial contours and contacts and occlusion and all that kind of stuff. But just learning the basics.
All right, so Paul, on behalf of True Abutment, we have a gift for you, and we want you to give this to a specific department, and it looks like it's the implant department. Thanks a lot for being a part of the family.
No problem. Thanks, Jeff. Here you guys go. Great job, everyone. Thanks for all your hard work.
Crack it open. All right, what do we get? Ooh. Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
Hook up a
These things
phone.
are great.
Let's rock out.
1, 2, 3.
Bob, Paul, I appreciate you letting me come over and take a look at this truly amazing success story. You have built an incredible laboratory, and you couldn't have done it without this guy, of course.
All right. Pleasure
Bob,
having you, Jeff.
thanks a lot, Paul. Appreciate it. Well, that is going to do it. Another episode of Interview in the books. Join us next time as we continue to find great success stories just like that. Until then, see ya. Welcome to another episode of True Abutment's Interview. I'm Jeff Kraft, and on this episode, we're in Olympia, Washington, which is about an hour south of Seattle. Now, we've been all over the country meeting owners of small labs and big labs. This episode, it's a pretty big lab. Let's go inside. So now the owner, Bob, started this over 30 years ago, and he embraced technology from the very beginning. But then he hired a guy named Paul that took it to a whole nother level. Speaking of, here's Paul here. Paul?
Hey Jeff, how's it going?
How you
Welcome
doing, bud?
Hey, come on back, let's see Bob.
Okay, perfect. Can't wait to talk to you about how you got started with Bob as well. Oh, there is the man himself.
Hey,
Bob
Jeff, how you
Zimick,
doing?
how are you?
Welcome to
nice to
Zimick
meet
Dental
you.
Lab.
I want to find out more about you guys, how you came together, and how you got started in this industry. I'm in the lobby. I'll meet you guys there. I want to find out all about you guys. First, Bob, I want to dive back. Another episode of True Abutment's Interview coming right at you. I'm Jeff Kraft, and this time we're coming from Renton, Washington, which is just outside of Seattle. We're going to be chatting with Alan Wan, owner of Moriyoshi. You ready? Good, come on. Now, the name Moriyoshi has been on the door since 1994, but Mr. Moriyoshi doesn't own the company anymore. Alan Wan, he was basically an apprentice. He decided to go ahead and buy the company from Mr. Moriyoshi. Did that about 6 years ago. I want to find out how it's all been going. Alan?
Hey Jeff, nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you as well. What are you working on here?
I'm just working on a big case, as we have a lot of big cases here.
Working hands-on, I love it.
You came in the perfect timing. It's just nice weather.
It was beautiful
Yeah,
weather
very nice
outside.
weather.
Can we go outside now?
Let's go outside.
Okay, great. Come on out. So I want to go way back to when you were 20 years old.
Yes.
And you were trying to figure out what to do with your life.
Yes.
I'm 43. I'm still trying to figure it out. But at 20 years old, you were trying to figure out what industry you wanted to go into. What brought you to the dental industry, dental lab industry?
So it started with my brother getting into dental school.
Okay.
At that time, my older brother. And he suggests me to see if I'm gonna be liking, working in a lab.
Okay.
So I stepped into a small lab that time. It was a 2000 in the spring.
Okay.
And then I was able to get a small, quick tour by this owner. It was like 2 people small lab. And I knew as soon as I stepped in there, I knew I'm gonna be doing this for the rest of my life. So that's how it started.
What was it about it right when you walked in? You knew. What was it that you liked about it?
I always liked enjoying anything like the Legos, playing with my hands when I was young. So that's how it brought me to here. Whatever they've been doing, even I didn't know what they're doing, it just seems pretty fun to me.
Okay.
And I know that I can do really good at this. And here we are today, so.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Now let's go to the introduction to Moriyoshi. What drew you to Moriyoshi? Had you heard about him before? What was that driving force towards his lab?
So, after working a year at that small lab, I was eager to look for somebody who's really good at this, because there's a lot of really different levels, with the skills on this industry. So I knew there was a master ceramist, master technician, Mr. Moriyoshi. It was an hour driving from where I lived at time. But so I came here driving 1 hour, and he was the man I was looking for. And he was actually an instructor back in Japan. And then he came here in his 40 and established this lab in 1994.
And what was it about him that you just wanted to emulate?
One thing I like working for Mr. Moriyoshi is that his skills. He was really careful from start to finish. Like I have seen other labs where the owner does not really work, they don't really get involved in the process, but he was always there from start to finish. And that's what it got hooked me to it. And he's the one who taught me over the years, pretty much from start to finish. Yeah.
Okay, so he was looking to retire. He was looking to move on and next chapter in his life, and he was looking for somebody to take over. And he asked you. But the first time he asked you, you said, no, I don't think I'm the right person to do that. I've got no money. So that was put on the back burner, right?
So going back to 2016, he told everybody that he wanted to retire and settle back in Japan, where he came from. So he started looking for somebody to follow his tradition and work ethics. That's how it started. He was looking for somebody, and surprisingly, he came to me and suggested me to take over the lab, which was a little surprise at first.
It's intimidating just to get that question asked.
It is, but at the same time, I have seen Mr. Moriyoshi working so hard, achieving his American dream, and the way he treats us, the attitude he has, I didn't know I'm gonna be like him. So although that's why I kind of turned it down at first, and then he came back to me. After 3 months later, he said, Alan, I know you do a good job, so I will help you with any financing matters. So I accepted. That's how my story began from that point. So.
And now the business is doing great. Your wife works in the office as well. Tell me about some of the individuals that have been there from the very beginning since with Mr. Moriyoshi as well.
Yes. So I had a pretty good people to start with. That's number one for me, for my success, I have to say. And I give full credit to those who's been here since day one for me. And actually they've been here about 27 years. Especially two members, they've been there since the beginning of Moriyoshi Lab back in 1994. So I was getting so much help from them. They would stay late if there's anything I need at the lab. So they didn't just come here and work 8 hours and just go home. They were actually there from the beginning. So I feel really blessed to have them. And I'm still blessed that I have them now. I know they're gonna retire soon, but I cannot say thank you enough, to those two people who's been here with me.
Well, you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with, and it sounds like those two individuals. What are their names?
Their name is Sam.
Sam?
And the other guy name is Mel.
Okay. And so they've been around for 27 years working with Mr. Moriyoshi. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you've made Mr. Moriyoshi proud, and those two individuals that have been there, are they proud to work underneath you?
I think so. I mean, they're still here with me at this, today.
Yeah.
I was really scared at first beginning of my first year because I really didn't know anything about the business side. And plus, I didn't know I'm gonna be good as Mr. Moriyoshi. So that's why I had to work double than Mr. Moriyoshi, at least to prove them that I'm working hard for them. So I think I did a pretty good job. And here we are today. We had grown up so well than before. And I'm sure if Moriyoshi sees me today, he will be very proud of us.
how did True Abutment and Moriyoshi, how did it come together?
As I start working on a big cases, I definitely need some help on an implant. So I was looking for a milling center who can help me that on cases, that I can utilize on a big cases. So I found True Abutment and their technique with the angle screw channel, ASC abutment, that did help with my career for sure. So all of my clients loved it. They like using, True Abutment. So now I'm stuck with them. So.
Yeah, you're stuck with them and they're stuck with you.
Yes.
What's been your favorite thing about owning a business?
Favorite thing, I have a 22 months little princess. We never really planned having a baby. And after I owned the business, I was feeling a little comfortable with the financing and all that. So we have now 22 months baby who's now have a small room in back of their lab. So she will come to the lab, visit daddy and mom. And I get to spend some time with her. So I guess that's the most success for my story. Can I make an announcement? Everybody can gather here. And we have a medal too. I just have a special event. You guys been working so hard for 5 years. This month is actually the 5th anniversary for us, this August month. So I just want to say thank you for working so hard for this company. And I got you some present for especially those been working since the day one for me. Sam, Mel, Young has been working so hard since day one for us. So today we had grown up so well. So thank you very much. And this goes to Mel.
Oh, thank you, thank you,
thank you. And goes to you. And Sam, yours.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, open and see what it is.
Oh, I'm so excited what it is.
And this goes to everyone who's on their 5th years.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, give me back all that. Bye.
1, 2, 3, 1.
All right, thank you very much, guys. Thanks for coming out today. Can I open it? Oh, wow. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for coming out. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Alan, I got to tell you, you've done a heck of a job over the last 6 years, not only learning the business, but also building the business. Nice job.
Yep, nice meeting you, Jeff. Thank you so much for coming out today.
Nice meeting you as well. I'm going to enjoy Seattle and enjoy this beautiful weather.
Please do. Thank you.
Take care. See you later. Well, that is going to do it. Another episode in the books. I'm Jeff Kraft. Join us next time, will you? So, Mr. Golden Key, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
So it's got to be pretty exciting getting this golden key. You've been with Moriyoshi Dental Lab for a long time.
Yes, past 25 years.
25 years.
Yes.
And what are you working on right now?
I'm doing a vaccine coping.
Okay. And when you started with Moriyoshi 25 years ago, did you think you would still be working for Moriyoshi Dental Lab, now?
I love this job. So when I started with Moriyoshi, I knew I'm going to be here for a long time.
You already knew it?
Yes, I already knew.
Since Alan has taken over, what's it been like with that transition?
He's doing a good job. He takes care of us really good.
Yeah. Well, he can only do a good job if you do a good job. So I'm going to get you back to your work. Thanks. See you later. Congratulations. So what are you doing? You're working hard.
Everything is.
How many years have you been with Moriyoshi?
21 years almost.
21 years?
Yes.
Wow, so and you got the golden key a little while ago.
Yes, I do.
What does that mean to you?
It's very important that I work with the Moriyoshi company.
Yeah.
That we do have amazing team with the family environment.
It's like a family here.
Yes.
Now you worked with Mr. Moriyoshi, and then he retired. Alan took over. What's it been like working with Alan?
It's been great. We do work together, help each other. Just I can ask more than anything.
Oh, that's great. Well, congratulations getting the golden key. I'll let you get back to work.
All right,
okay, see
you.
ya. Another
Went around to help out, as well as we stain and glaze some things here.
All right, so you guys have in front of you guys all I have in the abutment portion. And you guys, I think for the most part, I think most of you guys have done some staining and glazing. Am I correct or incorrect about that, right? So the staining and glazing part is very normal. You guys each have putties we're gonna share because there's not a ton of us. You're gonna inject the putty into the actual abutment hole. And then you guys each have a pin. The pin goes in again. You know, you're gonna have to hold it while you do this. You just wanna make sure it doesn't go through like this. You don't wanna do that. You want it to be surrounded by putty and barely to just go in, okay? The other thing I provided you guys with is little Sharpies so you guys can index. So you can try it and you can index it first. Once you do that, then what you would do is once you index everything, I would wait until we fire. We'll do it afterwards. I would put putty in. I would put the pin in there, right? Then the next thing I would do is from there, you would go about your stain and glaze portion of it. It's up to you how creative you want to be with it. From that standpoint, after that, we're gonna basically go to the oven, we're gonna fire all of this, and then when we take it out, then we'll go over the cementation process, okay? So as of right now, you're gonna fill the hole with putty, you're gonna put it on a pin, we're gonna glaze it, do a little bit of staining, then we'll fire it. Cool? Let's start there. Yeah. And so this is the actual abutment cement, so you can see how opaque it is.
Yeah, it just locks it up.
Yeah, so as you guys are working this, I'm gonna show you the tip of this. As you guys kind of see, this is how opaque the abutment cement is. It's very, very opaque. So you can't even see the little things on the inside of the actual.
I was gonna say, I don't know if you wanted to.
Yeah, we're sure.
I'm just gonna steal your putty then.
Yeah. Let's see, actually I have one or two more here. We could do this too.
Yeah, so we can open this here. It doesn't matter right now because we're going to use a tie base, so don't worry about that too much right now. So just get the putty inside of the crown from the bottom. And then, yep. So just hold it right there and you'll see a little bit come out the top. That's your goal. Keep going like that, keep going a little bit more. And now you can let go, or you can pull it back a little bit and put a little bit more on the outside there. So the goal of this paste is if that pin touches the crown while it's firing, it'll either stick to it or it'll break it. So you want your crown to be, or the pin to be completely surrounded by the paste. So,
your glazes are all pre-mixed already, so I pre-mixed everything for you guys.
Got it?
I'll sit with you because I know you haven't done this yet. So
you can push it in a little bit more.
So once you have it, you just get the pin.
It should be nice and stable there. And again, we're not really glazing the underside,
you just
so
don't
we
want
don't
it
really
to
have
go
to worry
through
too
all
much
the way.
about the excess. Yep.
You're going to hold it like this as you stain and glaze. So you've never done this portion of it. So all you're going to do is you're going to take your brush.
Very nice, good. I know, yeah, there's nothing to hold in here. I got that.
You're just going to pick up your glaze.
Thank you.
And you're just going to do one coat all the way around.
I do that just so I know, that it's all the way through
it's
there.
up to you. You don't have to. Anything below the height of contour, you typically want to try to polish.
Yeah, you can wipe
so
a
I would
little
do
bit
everywhere
off there from the
except
top.
below the height of contour.
It's okay, yeah. You just don't want to get it in your glaze. So as long as you can be careful around it, you don't have to wipe it off, or you can if you want.
And keep in mind, if this was a real life scenario, anything below the height of contour, you guys would not typically glaze, okay? Anything contacting tissue, you guys would try to polish. Everything above the height of contour, you would typically glaze. That's the Emax glaze.
Oh, then what's this?
This is the Emax glaze liquid. So it's only when you're changing colors that you would clean it in between because you're going to use the same brush for everything.
Oh, this is a clean.
Yeah. So so once you go into the color, you're just going to clean it and then go back into blue. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Where's my endo file?
I know, right? Seriously. You don't get an endo file. There's a hole in the crown.
This stuff is cheap, so don't worry.
You guys don't do much. I was like, you guys don't do much thing.
This is my second time.
Yeah.
So
no, just I'm setting you up for the future. The paste is cheap.
If you guys want a simple formula, you guys all practice in LA, Orange County. You just pick the whitest block, you glaze it, and you call it a day.
So push it down a little bit more on the
okay?
Push the whole crown down.
No one will be unhappy, I promise you.
It's pretty critical.
It's
yes.
pretty critical because what will happen is if the little pin touches the actual internal aspect of that hole, that channel, it will actually fuse the ceramic and break off. So you want to basically try to avoid that.
Yeah. All right, so now you're going to use your brush. You're going to grab a little bit of glaze over there. Yep.
That's up to you. So this is basically like an
Just gonna paint it
A2, A3
on.
shade. You can put it on if you like. I mean, mine as well. You know, you should try it, right? Just for fun.
Dude, this
yeah.
dry up.
Yes. So usually you'll have a little cover for
And
it.
so
but it lasts
on
a
the
long time.
palette
If it's
and
covered,
water palette,
it lasts a long, long time.
On this palette, you guys have your glaze. You have like an A2, A3 shade. You have a transparent, and you have the glazed liquid. You're going to use the glazed liquid to clean your brush in between the colors, okay?
Glazing liquid is this?
Yeah, correct.
Do it also.
I feel like I wiggled a little bit on there.
No, you can polish it pretty nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's not, you don't necessarily have to glaze it.
Yeah.
Generally people glaze it because you can add colors to it and make it look a little bit more
Correct.
natural.
Yes.
Just a solid
So
monolithic color.
you've been talking with Dr. Hagen. This is the other Dr. Hagen.
I told her, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Too funny.
Got it? Looking good?
A little bit of wiggle on there.
If you like Storm, I can have him request you instead of your dad. Just kidding.
Yeah, I'm sure that'd make my dad real happy.
Yeah.
Looking good.
You didn't give me the Trojan color, so I could do this.
I like it.
And then just take a little bit of the glaze.
And a little UCLA color there for you.
Brush it, leave a little bit.
Yeah, there's no red, sorry guys.
Nice.
And so the one thing you guys will see that when we do this
What are you
cementation,
UCLA, hey, go,
Yeah.
go Bruins, I like
Yeah.
it, yes.
I provided you guys the regular
sorry
cement
to hear that.
and not the hybrid abutment cement, just because it takes too
okay,
long.
okay, good.
You'd have to sit here and hold it awkwardly for 8 minutes. For the sake of the practice, you guys will get it. It's the same process. You will still elute it. The only difference is you're going to
So you can
tack here
add a
versus
little bit
waiting. Okay.
of this stain, or did you add some already
Yeah.
at the bottom?
You guys all set?
Oh, perfect.
Once you guys are all
Excellent.
set,
Okay, a
just
little
bring
bit
it
of blue at
back
the top.
here. Let me know when you guys are ready. Oh, thank you. All right, thank you. So this is a piece of paper that looks like a ladybug. It's not quite a ladybug, but like remember where you put it. Okay, this is a tray. Just put your initials next to wherever you put your abutment. So yeah. Okay. Wherever you want. We're not judging you. It's okay. I'm joking.
Okay.
Please. Just as a general rule, you guys want to make sure anytime you fire something, Dr. Dino, you should do it right there. And turn it so it's in a little bit.
You want it this way?
Yeah.
Towards you?
Towards the center of the tray. Dr. Dino.
Thank you.
Okay, Tiff. Oh, fail. I made one fall.
I would use tweezers.
I know. If it doesn't come out good, it's not my fault.
With my
I blame Tiff.
Vita vacuum mask.
I know. You, Dr. Troy? Right there. Okay. Okay. Oh. Thank you. All right. That is it. I think we're good to go. Cool. What's that?
Close the plan.
That is it. Questions about anything else so far? You guys don't have to sit here for 25 minutes. I don't know what else we have lined up, Storm. Yeah.
Yeah, so now pretty much free time. I'd have got nothing planned, so
yeah.
feel free to.
Don't want you to burn yourself.
Yeah, feel free to look around at stuff if you have questions, things like that. This is your time. Ask me or come up or ask Steven, whatever you want to do. Lauren also from Ivoclar is back there. So if you got questions for us, please come see us. Check out the True Abutment Urus implant stuff over there. I've been using their Urus system for a while now. It's very, very nice. Nice, fully timed surgical guide. So they know the exact position of the hex when you place it, when it's at its final depth. So they pre-mill you a custom healer before the surgery. So when you do your surgery, place the implant using their guide, screw it in and get it so that hex is aligned correctly, and then you can actually screw in a nicely milled titanium custom healer right at the time of surgery. Very, very nice. So as long as you have good initial stability, you can use that. If not, you can use the healing cap and place it at uncovering, but very, very nice.
Yeah. Very cool. Questions about anything? No. Time is yours for the next 23 minutes.
Or so. Yep, take a little break, grab some food, snacks, stuff like that. And then we'll have lunch afterwards after we practice cementing.
Yep.
How much is the new oven, the CS6?
The CS6 is 13,995, so well below 14,000. If you're, there are different promotions there. If you're an existing Ivoclar customer, you can get X amount off. There's the other one we talked about that. If you, there's a sundries program if you want. It is quite a bit of product. If you buy 30K over basically 4-month period, you can get the oven for free. But again, it is quite a bit of product. Yeah.
I saw somebody who bought it. I saw a picture of it the other day, and I just saw all the boxes, and I go, "Wow, $30,000!
He's one of the
a lot of Ivoclar stuff."
Yeah.
Wow.
He didn't do it 30, but he's one of the first to order one as well. Yeah, you can. Yeah,
that's
correct.
true.
Yeah.
Like 5 years worth of blocks and just I'm not even.
Yeah, probably not even 5 for most people, right? Because if you're
2 years supply of blocks.
If you're pretty if you're a pretty busy office, like I mean, it could be like about 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, you can buy zirconia, you can buy Emax, you can buy Empress, you can buy TetraCAD, TelioCAD, and then you could obviously buy cements, composite bond, whatever else you're going to use. So if you're busy enough and it makes sense, then it makes sense, you know. There was a joke once, they had asked me, like, hey, do the blocks expire? I'm like, no, we're doing pretty good right now, so no. Yeah.
You just got to keep them in the freezer.
Yeah, there are stories about blocks in the freezer.
Yeah, I want to say we probably spend, in my office, we spend about $1,200 a month on blocks, on Emax, I would think.
14,400 a year. Yeah, it's quite a bit. I think the average office does something like 300 to 500 crowns, depending how busy you are, a year. And I've had offices that will do upwards of 1,000 crowns a year. So if you're doing 1,000 crowns a year, it's a no-brainer. You just gotta buy it, and you consume that in less than a year and a half.
Yeah, there's a great story. My dad did a training, and he goes, "Oh, go get the Emax," and they go, "Okay, we'll go in the back and get it."
Yeah.
And they're keeping them in the freezer to keep them fresh. It's not even a joke.
Yeah, and there was this ongoing joke. Then I was like, and he goes, "Did you tell him this?" I was like, "No." I was like, "But tell him they should put it in the microwave to defrost it." And
so you gotta reheat it. Yeah.
And so his dad sends me a photo of him like in the microwave, pushing defrost. It's pretty funny. You just encounter some stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
One time I did a training with his dad. We go in the surgical, we're doing the training, and then like it's like break time, and we're in the sterilization area, we're talking, the doctor just walks in like eating a sandwich, puts on top of the sterilizer with nothing on, and you're just like, that's not gross at all. Yeah.
Any other dental related questions? Whether materials, things like that, bonding. Bonding is always a good one. Nobody follows the directions. They use like 9 different products from all the different companies and combine them together. It seems to work really well.
Yeah.
What are you guys using for bonding? What does most everybody use? Panavia. Yeah. What do you use? Ivoclar multi-link or Variolink?
Variolink and Aesthetic.
Okay. Yeah. What do you use?
Don't tell Steve.
I know. Yeah.
I use it best way.
Yeah.
But for this, I always use the multi-link.
Yeah. If it helps, her husband uses Variolink.
How about you?
Yeah. I got half of them.
Panavia. Yeah.
What do you use?
I use Panavia. Sorry, Steven.
Yeah, that's okay. But his dad uses Variolink.
We use a combination of both. I would say.
Going back to Panavia, you use like SA or?
I use V5.
V5?
Yeah. I use V5.
What's your reason behind that?
SA didn't exist when I started using it.
And so I have
just,
a buddy who uses both.
Yep.
So he uses SA for.
I'll use SA for zirconia.
Yeah, and then he uses a V5 for all the glasses.
Yep.
So you have to use the little two. I think it's two different. Their
Yeah.
own-
There's a primer. It's in a brown and white bottle. Restoration primer, and then
For
the
what?
tooth primer is in a
For
blue
yeah.
and black bottle.
I'm trying to just minimize all these things.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I just got the mono.
Yeah.
Monobond.
Yep.
Try that and use my own. I use Opacity
Yep.
for tooth-related bonding.
Okay,
stuff, and then-
but not combined with.
With Panavia? Yeah.
But you don't use the OptiBond with the Panavia. You use the tooth. You use
The A and B.
Panavia's
A and B.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because some people like to use. So a perfect example of this is 3M.
Scotch Bond?
Yeah. So Scotch Bond. If you use RelyX Ultimate, right?
Yeah.
So the dual cure activator is in the Scotch Bond.
Yeah.
It's not in the cement.
Right.
So some people like to use somebody else's adhesive with RelyX Ultimate. You don't. I mean, they'll like cure, but you'll never. So that's the stuff.
Yeah,
that's the reason. If you're basically that's the moral of the story. If you are bonding something, just use exactly what the manufacturer recommends. And I would say overall, VarioLink and Panavia V5 are very similar handling.
Yeah, they're both very good cements.
Yeah.
I think it depends on what you're
They're
trying to
both
achieve.
excellent.
Meaning, like it's like anything else. You have a colleague that uses XYZ and will tell you they stopped using it because of whatever, and like they'll say like, oh, Optibond's a terrible bond, and you're like, I've been using it forever, right?
Yeah.
Because we all have those stories, right?
It's just what works in your hands.
Yeah,
and what
you'll
you're
ask
comfortable
5
with.
people and they'll be like, oh, you're using that? It's a terrible product. And you're like, I mean, never had a failure.
Yeah.
I've been using it for 10 years.
Yeah, I think really the biggest thing is following the directions and being very complete with how long you're scrubbing the adhesives in, with how, especially like we talked about, if you're not using etch and prime, with how long you're etching the crowns. Like we have ADEC in our office, right? So our ADEC 12 o'clock units have a timer in it. So I use that timer every single crown. As soon as my assistant puts that red edge, as soon as it hits the crown, I start the timer for 20 seconds. It beeps at 5 seconds, so they know to be holding it over something, ready to rinse it off. And then as soon as it beeps, boom, it gets rinsed. Just simple stuff like that. I like to apply since I'm wearing my loops, I'll apply the primer, restoration primer myself, because I can see the margin very easily and I know that I'm not getting it all up on the sides. But something like that, very simple. It's just very fastidious, very meticulous stuff. Yeah, and then making sure you're scrubbing in that adhesive into the tooth for at least 20 seconds, hair thinning it really well. Yeah.
This is completely out of context, but who was the gentleman that asked me about this? Okay. Oh, so I think I misspoke about it. I got a little bit confused. C1 is not compatible with Zimmer. It's M4 and 7 that's compatible with Zimmer. C1 and B3 is a standalone. And there's no
So Stephen, what's this warm color?
That's more like that's our VarioLink, and the reason we're doing VarioLink and not the actual
confusing.
abutment
Lunch
is
at
because
5?
we don't want
Okay.
you guys to wait, so we're just going to have you cure with regular cement.
okay.
But the
16
in practice,
minutes
it's the
left
same
on the oven,
process.
then we
The
still have to
warm is
cement,
kind of
so-
like an A1
Yeah,
color.
if they wanna
I'll show it to you. It's
So you guys don't have
at this point,
A1, A2, you
10
guys
minutes.
use different.
we use value. We use
That's
value
similar.
because it's more accurate, right? Like you don't look at a tooth and go, God, I wish it was more of an A1 or A2. You just think
Yeah,
it should
it's
be
been good.
warmer.
Yeah, so this is the kit.
When we do our cements,
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
what
so
this
is the
looks
kit.
like.
It's been very good. All the planning is done.
Make everything.
Yep, so that's what the guides look like. And so basically when you...
Yeah, neutral would be no change. Light would be
Not now.
like a B1,
because-
light
yeah,
plus.
I mean, just send it in. Yeah, so when you go through and deliver it... Let's see,
I would get trend neutral, and
So-
then maybe a light just to have it as a backup.
You have like a stop point.
Neutral for
Exactly.
everything.
So yeah. So when you use the
light
drills,
frontiers.
right?
When you say
So,
light, that's when
so
you
yeah,
know
it has
that
the stopper like that, right?
No,
so that's your depth
neutral
control,
means
right?
transparent. Light is
Yeah.
like a B1, so the black line
And then when
represents
you go to
stump
place
shade,
the
and
implant,
then,
this
and
is
then
how you
light
get
plus
the
is
timing.
like
So
will
you're
block
looking
out a little
for
bit more, so more of a bleach shade.
silver portion, right?
Yeah, these are probably
And
the
these
three
little-
colors
these
you
little
would
flags
use.
here. So
this
the
is
silver
more
portion needs to be
European
lined
colors.
up like that.
Some
and then
people
you
like the
know,
warm
not
if
the
you have
black.
older patient base and just try to tone it down
so
a little
like
bit.
this.
If you're in the posterior and you're doing
and then now you know that
high
it's,
water
the
prep,
hex is
I
in
would
the
do
correct spot.
transparent.
If I'm trying to block out like an A2 stump shade, and then the patient wants to end up with the B1 restoration of the veneer,
Light plus, light or light plus.
I'm gonna block it out.
So the answer is maybe. It depends how much thickness you have.
True.
Right? So it's all dependent on how thick the ceramic is and how much reduction you have. If you have 0.5, probably not, because there's not enough reduction. There's an app that we have. It's called Shade Navigation app. It's free to download.
Yeah, these are the things that's hard.
So you pick the shade you want. Like let's say you want a B1. Let's say you're doing a veneer, and let's say prep shade is ND2, and let's say you have
There you go.
1.1 millimeter.
Yeah, so that's what they look
You're
like.
doing Emax
Really
tag.
nice.
Oh my
And I just
God.
put a little.
Metal.
I'll tell you what
Yep,
to
they're
use.
full milled titanium. Yeah.
That is
Yeah, so the
amazing.
tissue
Yeah.
really likes them.
Emax,
And then I
Emax
just,
Shade Navigation.
I put a little
it's in the
Teflon
app
over the
store.
top, and I put a little composite there just
Perfect.
to.
That's how you finish off surgery day, and then
Yeah.
Shade
Yeah.
Navigation app.
Yeah, when you're ready to restore, I mean, just unscrew
Free
it
to download.
and use the
So
silver
yeah,
post.
red one. Yeah, red one.
Very nice.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a really nice system. And they're, I think it's like for the guide, the implant, and the custom
I
healer.
have.
It's
Yeah,
like
it's a good product. Yeah.
$500.
It looks better than a water temper.
When I was placing the
Better
bell,
than any of the
my
composites
implant was
stuff.
$550. So
I mean, they're
yeah,
all
it's
about the
pretty
same.
good
So
price
whether you
savings
use
on
like
that
the
as well.
vocal block
Yeah,
or the
it's
hour
easy to
block
use, very
or the
easy to
GC
use, yeah.
block or the
Yeah,
3M
same
block,
stuff.
they're all going to be pretty comparable.
And then you could patch it up with working
Yes, yeah. So they give you a nice surgical report.
Correct.
Yeah,
and
exactly
so indirect
what,
direct, meaning
what
like
the plan
imagine
is,
like you have
so-
3 MODs. Like TetraCAD's the fastest milling. So let's say you walk in an operatory and you have 3 MODs, and
Yeah.
you're just like,
So let's-
I don't want to do 3 MODs. But you're running behind, okay?
so this is-
You can literally
probably
scan,
can't,
you can prep, you can mill it
I
out.
would show you, but it comes as a
Yeah, scan it. You could try it in. If there's open contact, add composite, seed it back to your. It's
Oh, yeah,
faster,
there we go.
right? Because think about
Yeah, so
matrix band and a wedge.
This is a case I did
Try this, it does.
I don't know, last week or 2
Correct.
weeks ago, something like that.
Well,
So that's the order of
Yep. Yeah, so we look here.
scalar and pop it up, or a sticky
So
thing,
offset
either one.
9.5, so
but like
we know we're
imagine
using the
like
bottom-
never having
the
an
bottom
open
sleeve,
contact.
the bottom of it. So see, it tells you right
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I don't want to spend
That
time
only
doing it.
matters for
Right,
the
and so the
final-
nice thing is the block costs
yeah,
a little bit more than composite
yep,
to
exactly
use,
right.
but it's
it only
faster.
matters
If
for
it takes
that
you,
and
Buy
this
the smaller
first
block.
flat drill.
Correct.
Shorter one, the 12.
the 14 will work fine.
I just always order
But
14.
it
Yeah,
has 3
because here's the
lines, so
thing:
that's
if
only
it's too
difference.
big, then
Yeah,
you.
so that's the sequence there.
Us to
Yeah, so like
unlock
that,
composite.
and then they give you different
Should be
protocols,
5 or
whether
6
it's soft
minutes.
bone or bone, and then you screw it in.
Yeah.
That's the most
Yeah,
to do.
Yeah.
pretty cool, pretty
Yeah.
nifty.
And they're still like what, $30?
Less,
Oh, they're less.
like
Yeah,
20
I
or
think,
25.
Okay, and
The sinus lift.
you could go.
I haven't. I haven't. Maybe
Inlay on my
eventually,
feet,
Yeah, in there.
but I have not as of yet. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what that case
5
right
to
there.
7 is usually the range.
That's what I'm trying to figure
So-
out.
A little custom nail.
Yeah. it's
You would
perfect,
charge
yeah.
it the same, so
Yeah, it came out really
how
nice.
you
Yeah,
fabricate,
I mean,
it
it's like
doesn't matter. The
nerve
fee's
is
the fee,
there
meaning
and
it's
everything
inlay,
like
it's inlay,
that,
it's
so
only, it's only, it's
surgery
crown, it's
is-
crown.
They do all the
Right,
planning.
that
you just
they're all
approve it.
coded
Yep,
for
so they'll
ceramic
send it to
inlay,
you, and then
onlay,
you can
ceramic
review it,
crown. So meaning like,
and just say-
if you send it to a lab, you got a
Yeah, so
ceramic
usually
inlay,
if it's pretty close,
ceramic inlay.
then I
So
just
does
you
the
sign it and say
inlay,
it's
I've
good.
done it a long
But
time
if there's big
because
changes,
really
then
good.
they can do like a
Yeah, I
yep,
mean-
like, right, yeah, and help you plan it.
And then
Sometimes what I'll do, since I have the software on my computer,
yeah.
is
Tack
if it's a
here.
very specific
Tack
placement that I
everything,
want,
yeah.
sometimes I'll just plan it, take a screenshot and send it to them and
That's
say, hey,
it.
just make it look
Yeah,
like
with
that.
something like this light is unique in that this is a 3-second light, so you can cure all of our stuff
Yeah.
in like 3 to
Yeah.
5 seconds.
Yes,
It's pretty
like the very
pretty
smart.
sweet. It's a more high power light.
How much are these toys?
1950 is a retail, but you get as a Cerec owner, you get $350 in bond, composite, and flowable. Then you get another 2 refills of Emax on top of that, so another basically basically $350 worth of Emax.
So you get like all the cement bonding stuff.
Yeah, you get $700. So you get 2 refills of Emax, you get bonding agent, a flowable, and a composite, and I'll throw in cement. Yeah. but it'll speed up time. So the entire premise of this is if you're doing an MOD, you can take this, you can do 4 to 5 millimeters of flowable or packable, cure it in 3 seconds and you're done. So you scrub in our bond, you cure that in 3 seconds, you do 5 millimeters of composite, cure it in 3 seconds and you're done. Because, you know, people hate MODs, man.
I know, so like if it's like a new lesion and then you're like, I'm not ready for a crown, all that stuff, and there's a little younger patient, what do you do, right?
Yeah,
and
composite.
If I can get paid like $200.
Yeah,
doing
and
it, right?
15 minutes, yeah.
I can mill it out, less headache.
Yeah.
You know.
Less headache, no matrix band, no wedge.
And then contact's perfect.
And you could add composite to it.
I just make it
Divergent, yeah. Yeah, it just needs to be a little bit so the camera can see it, right? Because if it's like this or parallel, the camera can't really see. Yeah.
blow out a little bit of it.
Correct.
It's a big decay.
Yeah. Yeah, you blow it out and it's not quite a crown and you could buy them 10 years, like it's a win, right? Because it's less aggressive, you'll save him 10 years.
You mill it out, there's nothing to polish or nothing.
You polish it a little bit, yeah. But
you polish a little bit afterwards?
Yeah, but it polishes really easily. Like, it's not like a composite where you have to spend a lot of time. You should be able to just do it in like 1 or 2 minutes. Like, Storm uses a lot of TetraCAD. Yeah, the number one reason they use it is because it mills in 5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just changing strategies. Which areas is it applicable to do things in, you know?
You know, I would say inlay onlays, crowns obviously, bridges, anything premolar forward. Well, when you have zirconia, you could do molar. The limitations of block, the block's 40 millimeters, so that's going to be your limitation. Like if it's bigger than 40 millimeters, you won't be able to do. You can fire it. Can you mill it? The answer is no.
The inlay design in Cerec, I've never done it. It's like there's nothing to adjust. It's just
No. So you just marginate the prep.
on the top, or even the puzzle. Oh, you have to marginate the whole puzzle piece, right?
And then you would marginate on the inside of the margin. Yeah, versus on the margin or outside. Hey, Storm. Question. For an inlay, do you marginate on the inside of the occlusal, or is it?
Oh, just the whole outline of it. It'll figure out the internals on its own. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. How do you guys do a lot of inlay onlays? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer with Cerec.
Yeah.
I know. I'm trying to change my whole workflow. I don't want to do any matrix, nothing. If I want to do MOD, and the patient is young, not ready for a crown thing, then I'd rather prep that, scan everything. So if I have 3 in a row, I would do 1 block at a time. 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes.
Or you could buy 2 more mills, but it'd be easier to do 1 at a time.
Buy 2 more mills, get a CS6. Get 1 for free.
Yeah. No, but yeah, so do you guys still do it where you prep 1, you send 1 to mill, you prep the second one?
The easiest way to do a case like you just described, so say you're doing 13, 14, 15, would be to prep like 13 or 15, prep that, scan it, start milling, and then you can work on 13, prep 13, mill that, cement them both, and then do 14.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because as you're prepping,
As soon as you prep 14 and 15, now you have to do those 2 together because they're touching.
yeah, and the bottleneck will be the milling.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing about like ceramic. If you're doing those in Emax, you would do 1 at a time simply because you would send it to mill, and as that's milling, you'd prep, scan, design the next one, send that to mill. The other one's out, you try it in, make your adjustments, go on to the last one, prep, scan, design, mill as the other one's milling.
You don't design it
Yeah.
side by side on the software.
I mean, you can, but
We don't do that either. But
but it's faster to do it the other way.
Yeah.
So the most ideal multi-unit Cerec case with a single mill is teeth that are not touching and not opposing each other either. So like a 29-31, 28-30,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
The best case because prep one, get it milling, prep the other one. By the time you're finished scanning and that one, the other one's done. Interesting. Put it in. Yeah.
Or you could be like him and just have 3 mills.
Yeah. Or that.
Yeah.
Two, we only have 2.
Yeah. I mean, don't you have a compact too?
Yeah, we have a compact. That's
yeah.
for storage.
Yeah.
With the red cam and the blue cam.
Yeah. At one point, they used to start on the compact, and then they would prep the next one, send it to mill, and they would come out at the exact same time.
That's very true.
Yeah.
So you try to keep one dry only?
One mill?
One wet versus dry.
Oh, no. One does dry milling. Our other one, we have an older MCXL, which dry milling is not even an option. It didn't exist when that machine came out. So, but they work perfectly. We just don't mill zirconia on that one.
You do mostly Emax.
We do Emax for the most part. Yeah. Yeah, so, but if you're doing back-to-back, so say you're doing 2930, yeah, prep them both, scan them both, mill them both. So with a single mill, you're basically milling one and waiting now. Right. Yeah, and the strategy when you're doing multiple units like that is scan them both, get their proposals. Whichever one has the nicest proposal, start on that one, design it, and get it milling as quickly as possible. Then you have all the time in the world to manipulate the other one.
Got it. That's if you're doing side by side.
Yeah.
Would you ever just do one, mill it, and then prep the other
No,
side?
because now you have, there's no way to get the contact.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. Yeah.
I think what I'm trying to think of a scenario. I was doing 2 crowns side by side, and I just prepped one, milled one, and then started prepping the other while I was milling. And then when it was purple, I put it in there. And
That could work.
Yeah,
that's
that'll
fine.
work.
Yeah.
And then you have a contact, yeah.
Yeah, and then that went into the oven while that one was milling.
Yeah, that works too.
You just need a reference.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would work too.
that's what the Emax when you're trying it in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you do a lot of like TetraCAD or inlay online materials? Or do you-
I use a lot of hybrids for inlay online.
Yeah.
Yep, pretty much all I use. Because the margins mill so beautifully.
Yeah.
Very, very nice, yeah.
I haven't done any of those. I really want to though.
Yeah, they're good. You have to be very, not selective, but more selective than you think. I would say when I first started doing them, I did a lot of things that there was like multiple cracks, and when I'm looking back on it, I probably would have just done a full crown and it would have made my life easier.
That's what happens when you use Panavia.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Just joking.
But
Totally
basically, yeah,
joking.
the moral of the
Totally
story
joking.
is the more exits you have, right? The more walls and things, it's just more difficult to get it to draw. And so, I mean, when you're doing something with, it's an MOD and like a lingual finger sort of thing and all this stuff, and you look at it and you go, well, I don't really know how beneficial that was because the thing was cracked on all sides anyway. So
Just
now
cover
that
the whole thing.
correct. Now when I look back on it, I probably would have prepped it as a crown link.
Yeah.
And that's for the most part. If the tooth doesn't have a crown now, it gets prepped as a crown link. So my margins are high water, mid facial, usually using like an HT block because it blends really well in that particular scenario. Unless they have a really dark staining where the occlusal, like where an amalgam was or something, then you have to be a little bit careful with that.
That's the new world. The
Yep.
optical aspect of it.
Yep. There, yes.
I'm like old school dentist, so it's like
It's fun.
Is that
It's
right?
very fun. And what I always
Adhesive
recommend
dentistry
is
works.
when you're doing posterior, so you're doing, second molar, first molar, whatever, practice your staining and glazing. Practice choosing the right translucency blocks and things like that. So when you do get that anterior that you need that knowledge for, you're ready. Because it is very rewarding and it's very fun. When you can nail an anterior, right? Like you're like, yes, I got that number 9, that single unit. Like, yeah.
It's
And
always
so-
a single central.
Yeah,
Always.
yeah, it is. And you're like mimicking light. Like number 8's got crazed lines and it's got all this stuff that you're trying to do. That's where all that practice. So practice on those molars, right? If you've got a little bit of extra time, and usually my assistants will stain and glaze. But sometimes if the patient, especially now, like if a patient is really interesting, like they've got really a lot of translucency, or they do have crazed lines or something like that, and that's, your brain just starts to look for that stuff. Once you're not trying to figure out how to use the software, once you're very comfortable with it, then you've got other brain space for other things. And so you go, ooh, I want to stain and glaze that one because I want to see if I can match it. And if you don't get it right, who cares? It's freaking number 30.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And it's
Right.
it's on the lingual in number 30 or something like that.
Yeah.
No biggie, right?
Yeah.
But it's good practice, and it's low stress practice.
Yeah, and crown lay is a nice thing, especially if it's mid-facial. You don't need to stain anything typically. You just glaze it. because why would you?
Yeah.
I just gotta use different translucency blocks to see how it comes out.
Yeah.
So to give you, it's a weird formula, but to kind of give it to you, to put it in perspective, if you have a low translucency at 1 millimeter, a high at 1.5, and a medium at 1.25, they look identical in the mouth. So like, why did I tell you that? Like, depending on what the coverage amount is, like let's say you're doing number 8 and you have a little bit more reduction, but number 9 you don't have as much reduction because it's a cast post. Well, maybe you use a low on one and you use a medium on the other, and you just vary the thicknesses in order to get them to match in the mouth. I mean, that's a little bit more of a complicated case and a complicated thing to do. I mean,
Ivoclar has a Shade Navigator app for your phone too. Yeah, it's very good. It's very helpful.
Yeah, you should download it if you don't have it. It's pretty sweet. You basically, I'll show it.
Yes,
not that you
let
guys
me take this out 1 second.
Weren't you getting warm back there, Tiff? Yeah. Yeah. So basically what you do is you would go back, you would select, let me start over.
Yes.
How, I mean, since I'm not a Cerec user, how deep can you go
So
down
basically what you would do is you would select the shade you want. Say you want an
pretty deep.
A1.
Yeah,
you would
pretty
tell
deep.
it what type of restoration you're doing. I'm doing a veneer. This is your prep shade. You would say my
so
prep shade
with prime
is
scan, the
like an
depth of
A2.
scan's like
Then it asks you how
20
much
plus
reduction
millimeters.
you have.
It's pretty significant.
mill it to that depth?
Your limitation would be the size of the block. Yep, and also the draw basically, because it's not going to mill it. It will block out undercuts for you. But also, yes, there's a discussion of whether endo crowns are good or bad. I think that's always a hot topic. Always. So correct. My personal preferences, I place a lot of buildups. In my head, I would rather have an even thickness of ceramic everywhere, because that's going to maintain the flexure at all points. But other people, there's cases with endo crowns that have been there for years and years and years, and they're functioning perfectly. So it's up to you. But yeah, you can go pretty deep. Yeah, really your only limit is the size of the block. And exactly, yeah, because there's no question. I mean, you'll see when you scan like an implant, a deep implant, you can see the hex inside of there. So that's pretty far down, because you think you're, how tall is a tooth? 8, 9 millimeters tall, 7 millimeters tall, and then you've got 5 millimeters subgingival, and then the hex is another 5 or 6 millimeters. I mean, it's pretty deep, and you can see the hex. So on prime scan, that depth of scan is humongous. Yeah.
So many things to choose,
Yeah.
It is a lot, and I mean, after a while, it just becomes like composite, right? You just look at it and you're like A2. Like you just know, right? Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead, start cementing these guys.
Yeah. Are they out already?
Yeah, I took them out. I don't know how cool they are.
How long have they been out?
I don't know, a couple minutes.
They're too hot.
Okay.
Too hot.
Yeah.
This is another side note. Don't try and cool down your crowns too quickly.
Yeah.
It's very important when you take them out of the oven, you just let them sit there and cool on their own. Some people get these crazy ideas of like blowing air on them or putting water on them, putting them on a coffee cup. That was a big thing for a while. You put the coffee cup upside down, then put it on the coffee cup. That's a very good way to end up with two crowns.
Yeah,
Both
people used to swear by those things.
Yeah.
It cools down so much faster, and then we actually did a time study. We're like, it's the same exact thing.
And you have to be careful where you have it in your office too. Try not to put it directly under like an air conditioning vent or something like that, if it's especially like directly on it. There's nothing more frustrating than dealing with crowns cracking or bonding issues, because it can be very, very, very difficult to figure out why it's happening. And there's a lot of heartache because it's your patients that are coming back with, and then it's you, right? It's like, you just did this crown and now it's broken, or it hurts, or it came off, sort of thing. So just follow the book, just do everything just have to be very careful when you do that stuff, because it's super difficult to isolate.
By the way, look how talented she is. I mean, seriously. During this class, this is how boring I am. She made the entire thing.
And,
yeah. Wow. It's going on Etsy.
Yeah, it's going on Etsy. Okay, yeah. So let's practice cementing these, and then we'll sneak out for some lunch.
All right. So, what do you think? What do you think? Let's take one at a time.
Put it on a coffee
They're
cup.
warm, but you know, just that's how you do. You just go like that. It does make a nice.
Just kidding. Hang on, let me see.
Oh yeah, we have some nice burn marks on our countertops.
It's probably fine.
Yeah, it'll.
That's how you put on a coffee cup.
It's fine.
Actually.
Yeah, to prevent it from the burn marks on the.
Put the
Yeah.
whole
Oh, the whole plate on the. Yeah.
This is yours? No.
Oh, yeah.
You guys can keep the pallets. You cannot keep the curing lights, but you can keep the pallets.
Yeah, give the curing lights to me.
Yeah.
Oh, yours is upside down.
Yeah.
It is cool. Yeah, I wanted to use it this morning, but then somebody told me in the wrong room.
It's completely useless because it's like, we bought it because it's 10-inch bigger than the biggest TV that we could get. But like, we can't find it.
Oh. My bad.
Yeah.
I totally
That
am.
was that big TV. That screen is pretty
It doesn't
cool
matter.
too.
It doesn't matter.
That's actually not a surface.
Well, what is it?
It's just a...
No, I think
Yeah,
I
like
gave
a-
yours
but
away.
yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Tiff.
Yeah, but it's
I
kind
totally
of like
messed that up.
translucent-ish.
Yeah.
What are we watching? Netflix or what?
Oh no, we're eating soon, so...
Oh, The Lord of the Rings.
Let me see your crown real quick. Does anyone have a super colorful
Put it on the
crown?
live stream, and then we'll see if we can.
Sorry, is this yours, Tiff? Yours is like blue and yellow, right?
Yeah, K-drama.
Nope, that's
No one has a blue and yellow crown.
Mine was blue and yellow.
This is UCLA.
Wait, is this yours, Tiff? The
Oh my goodness.
Unlabeled one.
Oh, I think this is Tiff's. This is Tiff's.
Yeah, this is mine.
Isn't this
I
yours?
took it out
Super
exactly
blue
the
one?
same
Okay.
way.
Yeah.
Oh.
This one or this one?
Steven.
I know. I was not paying attention.
Pay attention to that ladybug.
I know. I was too busy. Tiff was being.
Is that mine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure, why not? Yeah.
You know,
Are you
like,
sure?
For 3 months, I started crazy about camping videos. And I started
Oh, like in like
Yeah, try
actual
to use the
camping or
back
like
of the
van
microbrush to
camping?
get it out, or
Sub-zero camping.
Okay.
And camping in the rain.
Uh-huh.
It's about YouTube is filled with camping videos.
is this stuck in there?
Camping.
Well, of course, but you know what you could be ready for, and you know what you're in for. Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty. They're.
It should be very subtle.
Yeah, most
Yours
of the.
was pretty subtle. Let's see, because you put a little bit.
Little bit of
Is it not coming out?
tips and then a little bit of yellow around the margin.
You want to try this or no?
Yeah, a little bit at the edge. Yeah, very subtle.
Is that
Yeah.
how subtle it
I
should
think
be?
I had a little like
Yeah,
plume
I think it's a good
coming up
job.
off the top.
Learn how.
Yeah, and if you
There's
look
a sink
at
on the other side of this if you want to try to take it
you
in the
look
sink
at
and just
the-
rinse it
the,
off.
There we go.
Yeah,
What am I
nice.
trying to say? Incisal or the cuss tips and things like that. You can just see how it just looks slightly translucent, and that's where that blue helps. I mean, it's very, very subtle.
Missing the.
And you'll learn it's. I mean, it's difficult when you're standing a purple crown.
Yeah.
So sometimes what
No,
people
we
do
were
is
just
they'll
trying to use the
crystallize
back
it
of the
first. They'll
brush.
turn it tooth colored first, like if you're doing the anterior tooth, and now you can put the stain on it. Well, it's tooth colored. That's helpful also. Yeah.
I think that whatever you paint, what you
Is-
see is what you get.
Yes. Yeah. It holds very well. Yeah.
The Vitas are a lot more washed out.
Yeah.
Which one did you recommend?
It depends on what you get used to, but this one is, what you paint is what you get. What you see, exactly what you get.
So for this part of it, guys, you're gonna apply Monobond to the tie base and to the internal of the Emax. Typically, you would normally etch this, but because we don't have sinks to rinse this stuff off, we're gonna skip that. Just apply your silane. Then you're gonna take your cement, you're gonna coat it. And we just use regular cement for this exercise simply because we didn't want you to have to hold it for like 7 minutes. You would just coat the tie base, seat it. Just take your light. There's a pre-cure function on it. Just pre-cure it real quick on either side, peel it off. You can fully cure, just let it sit, and then you're done. Okay?
We're watching your video.
I didn't realize that. Yeah.
Where are we getting this tie base? Is it in here?
There should be one in there, I think. Oh no, yours doesn't have one. Okay. Does yours have one? Yours has one.
I just grabbed one random one out there.
It doesn't fit? Or the tie base doesn't fit? Or the scan post doesn't fit? This does not look like a Nobel.
No, it's not.
None of these fit.
Oh. Really? It fit in the other one. Well, anyway, don't worry about it because you're just going to cement it to the tie base. So you got the correct tie base still. Does yours have a tie base? Yes, it does. Yeah, it should be in there. You just have one in there?
No.
Yep, one right there. Good. Let me see if I can track one down for you. Do you have a tie base? Yeah. Okay. Do you have a tie base? Ah, you're the only one.
Yeah. So you guys are going to try it in. You're going to index it first. You're going to draw a line from the crown to the abutment. Then afterwards, you're going to siline the sleeve of the tie base.
Do you have an extra tie base?
You're going to siline the intaglio. Then you're going to coat the tie base with cement.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. How come you didn't wear that mask today?
What mask? Oh, the clear one?
Yeah.
I don't know, I look like an idiot. I'd rather people not see my face.
Halloween is coming up.
I could take the mask off.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Where's our composite caps, Steven?
I know, right?
Come on.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, Lauren might have, so there we go.
Yeah.
You can see what it looks like, yeah.
As soon as you mentioned Panavia, I put them away.
Smells like acetylene.
It is. It's ethanol based, actually.
Ooh, okay. So let's see if it fits on this. Thank you.
Oh, is yours? Let me get you some cement. Maybe that's out.
They're grabbing you one.
Oh,
Yeah. Throw away the composite. You buy APX from Curare, and then.
Yeah. You're going on a network, right?
Yeah. Let me see if this fits in here. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So see, this is how it works perfectly, like that, and it's just like a nice little holder for it.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a composite cap.
Yeah. Nothing fancy. Once you get yours, once you get yours, it just covers the bottom piece. But
Really fast.
Yep.
Yeah, because
and
it's
actually, when
ethanol
you're
based.
cementing, you can do that too. Yeah,
No,
so see how it just fits in there like that.
Yeah, on the channel. So normally you would use it in the bottle. The way you use the monobond.
Yeah. So if you use that.
There's actually
it's
the
right
way
on the
this
bottom of
actually
it.
works is there's a small hole underneath right there.
Just like that.
You will put your microbrush in, then you would turn it upside down,
Dean-
6
Dean-
o'clock,
yeah, Dean
twice,
needs it,
so it lets enough air
Yep,
in to
exactly,
let
and
one
then
drop
that's how you
out.
hold it. So now you can sandblast the top
yeah,
of it
so
and
you
everything
little,
and not worry about getting sandblasting the part that's going inside the implant.
You know how you said you sandblast the scan post? Can you do the same thing, like cover it like this?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
So you just need to scan like this right here. You just need to sandblast like this part. Right here?
Exactly, the fat part. That's it. Yeah, you only have to do it once.
Okay.
And then, and then it'll stay like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Can I borrow that cap again?
Oh, yeah.
I'm just gonna take it around here. Thank you. Yeah, try it. Yeah. There's some are better than the others, but that one seems to work. Wait, yours. Oh, there we go. It's staying. There you go.
Not really.
No, it worked better on the other one.
Maybe it's worn out.
Could be, yeah. Some of them work better than others. I wonder why it worked on that one and not on this one, not on yours. Well, maybe because yours. Well, his was not cemented yet, so maybe that's why. I don't know.
Or you can buy that.
They have little analog ones, yeah. There's other shaped ones that work better. I wonder why it worked on his. That's weird. Maybe I'm confused now. How come
You guys have this, so just use this with this now. Or use a microbrush.
Does it go in?
Yeah, it does work. See, look, it holds it perfectly on this one. I don't know. Maybe you have a different.
Oh, it's not tight though.
No, it just stays in there, but enough to. Yeah. So maybe because you're just because. But yeah, that's what. Yeah. Yeah. So exactly. That's just gives you something to hold on to.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, so the way the Monobond works, so you see
Just take the Monobond.
Pour it in a damp dish, and your brush will be wet now.
Yeah, so you would sandblast it and then clean it off. Then you would use some Monobond on there. Yep. And then put the cement
in that hole to let one drop out on the brush. Yeah.
Now, so we're doing both.
I mean, do you actually index it with a thinner version of Sharpie?
Yeah. I mean, you can. It'll come off too.
We monobond both the abutment
and the crown, correct? Yep. Yeah.
It's a 20-second scrub.
Yep.
40-second
rest. Yep.
Just doing it in a proximal.
It just comes off. Rub it. So did I tell you there was like a year?
I don't feel like there's any on here.
Yeah, so you can see if you can try that on there too.
Oh, cool.
Close it out, right? They're all coming back. Empty bonding.
Put it in there, right?
You can put a little bit in there, and then I would put a little bit on the tie base. To be honest with you, I usually don't put anything in the crown. I usually
But he still uses Monobond
the
with
fit is so good, that's probably all you need.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
With the cement, you don't put it in the crown?
I barely put anything. The fit, yeah, the fit is just so, well, it'll go through because there's a hole in it, but there's just so much excess. See, yeah.
You Teflon the top of the...
Yeah, just sure. If you're very careful with how much
and then
cement
Doug's
you put,
like, I don't
then
know,
you
I've
don't
never
have
had
to.
an issue. I was like,
But-
yeah.
Because usually she does all this.
Yeah. Well, 100%. I think that's in most offices. So this is
Yep.
an actual
Red
true
etch the inside,
story.
or etch and prime, whatever you want to do.
So I don't know if we told you this story.
Correct. Yes.
So true story talking about silane. There's an office, I won't say what kind of office it was. It was a group practice. And so we're in there, we're training, and they're having all sorts of failures. And like, stuff happens in the office that maybe the assistant does or doesn't do that you just don't know. And we were like, we could not figure it out. We went in there 3 times and we're like, dude, why do you keep having fractures, debonds? And like the last time before, I was like, listen, if this doesn't work, maybe you should switch or try something else. Then we repeated again and we had them walk us through, and then the assistant was like, oh yeah, I buy the silane by the gallon. And I was like, wait.
What do you mean?
Took out a bottle of saline. Yeah.
Saline.
Yeah, saline. And I was like, oh. Literally, like you just hear these stories and you're just like, you cannot make this stuff up. Yeah. Yeah. She was using salt water to bond the crowns in.
That is hilarious.
Yeah, it's a true story.
The silane by the gallon.
Yeah, and the doctor was like, wait.
Huh?
Doctor was like, what do you mean you buy by the gallon? It's very funny. And
that's his fault.
Yeah. And then he was like, you know what? Never. He literally stopped. He goes, we're good. You can leave. I got this. I was like, all right.
Never happened.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you were buying actual silane by the gallon, you'd be spending
boatloads of
you'd
money.
be spending a lot of money.
Yeah. You'd have enough money to fuel your yacht on the way out.
How much is this a gallon? Did you ever calculate it?
I would tell you bonding agent is like 100,000 a gallon, and it's less than bonding agent, but yeah. If you're buying Optibond, it's a lot more, or it just depends on which brand.
On the manufacturing side, like it's like a Coca-Cola dispenser, basically, right? Squirt a little bit, it goes to the next bottle.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's like a big
Probably.
container.
Yeah. You know what's funny? There was a facility, I won't say which facility we toured, but there was one where like we went to go tour and it was another
yours
manufacturer.
making that noise?
And they were,
Yeah.
you can shut it off.
Try to do the 3-second. It's got this eyeball.
There you go. Now you can do it. Yeah.
He has that light too.
Oh, you really? Oh.
I didn't remember how to turn it off though.
Yeah. There was one company, I won't say which it was. I got the chance to tour their facility, and they had one person squirting in the composite and then compules. He literally just take a compule, squirt it, just throw it in the bin. Literally his job, and I was like, you couldn't automate this? Like, yeah.
I've been to a Curve
Yeah.
location, their
Yeah.
headquarters, I guess.
Yeah, in Orange County. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty interesting how they actually manufacture a
Sure.
composite.
Yeah. Have you been to our facility in Liechtenstein? I know you have, Tiff. Have you? Yeah. Yeah, if you see like composite being made, it's really interesting because like you go in all the rooms or resin, like everything's orange. It's orange lights, it's orange, like the windows are orange. It's really like trippy. Yeah. And like you see composites like bread baking, it's like in this gigantic vat and just sits there in an orange cover and they have to actually turn it every now and then. Yeah.
Oh.
Next IDS trip.
Oh, yeah. I guess I have to switch to Variolink and then I can go to Liechtenstein.
Yeah. Or maybe just tell me your dad uses it. Too funny.
Everybody good? Any questions about bonding to the tie base, anything like that? Pretty easy, right? Just a lot of little steps.
Yeah. You guys can keep the little glass pellets, our gift to you. Yeah.
With Variolink, I mean, it's not as great as I thought.
Yeah. Especially if you have adequate thickness, it doesn't really matter. If you have like enough ceramic from the emergence profile aspect, it doesn't really matter. It's really if like you're facially thin or if you're doing an anterior case, especially if the tissue, if their biotype is pretty thin, that's probably more when you're worried about it.
Yeah. But that.
Sharpie just rub off.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, or you can use a little alcohol and it'll come off.
Yeah.
You can lick it off.
Yeah. Just dip it in the patient's mouth and just take a.
But like it goes with the staining on the rest of your teeth. See, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be an extra charge. Polish.
Yeah, it's an early coffee stain.
Yeah, code 99999, just in case you're curious. Yeah. Too funny. Oh, look at that.
It's us. All right, everybody. To tighten it down? No, this is Nobel. I don't think they have a unigrip driver, yeah. How's it look? Contacts seem tight.
Yeah, like plastic down, yeah.
Well, I'm going to take you to make TIFF.
How long did it take?
Yeah.
For what?
Oh, really? Yeah.
Oh, the little junk there. I think,
Was it?
You make it for fun?
No, somebody else.
I don't know what that is. Normally, it doesn't come out. I think something's up with your oven, Stephen. Or there's something that exploded in there or something like that. Because there's about there's a whole bunch of junk on the top of it.
Is it just this, or?
That looks like object fish.
Maybe it's just, maybe it is. Maybe we just don't have any cotton there.
Yeah.
It was like covering everything on your tray though. Well, usually when you move, sometimes when you move the ovens around, they don't really like that either. Yeah, yeah, I know. Well, actually, just the tissue is really terrible. If
Yeah.
you take the tissue off, actually, you'll be fine. But.
Right. And I could kind of press it down too.
Yeah.
Does it not?
I see. What do you like about the MIS? Just curious.
It was keyless and really straightforward.
Sure.
Hey, you're welcome.
Straightforward helps in implants. You know, it's way more predictable. The less steps you can do, typically, the more predictable it is.
Unbelievable, Stephen.
It's easy to pick up our system.
Yeah. If you can get the office to understand, that's huge.
That's a big difference, yeah.
If you can get the office to understand the workflow, it's huge. Yeah. But yeah, from a workflow perspective, again, you know, I like the fact that you guys can temporize it. You can shape the Pontic site. You can fabricate your final. And one, there's no pressure because the patient's typically not there. And you have something to hold the space. You can take it out of occlusion, put it in occlusion, depending if you want an immediate load. But the nice thing about it is that you shouldn't have to do tissue curettage, and it should slot right in, so to speak, which is a very nice thing, I think, just from a workflow perspective. Again, it's the worst when you think it's going to be a 5-minute appointment and it turns into an hour or 2 hours because you're trying to control bleeding. You have to trough the tissue. It's not fun. Yeah.
If anybody's curious what happens when you put Emax in on a zirconia cycle, that's what it looks like. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
It just melts.
Yeah, see that little puddle right there? That's the Emax.
Yeah, Emax fires at like 1500 degrees. Zirconia goes to over 2000.
Yeah,
it melts it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very nice. Yeah, that's what it looks like. That's what the Emax turns into, a little puddle. And then it welded itself to my tray also, so that was really cool.
A crown?
Say that again?
Correct. A regular block and then an abutment block. So your cost
Suprinity?
on a screw retained abutment is
Oh,
right
oh,
around
yeah,
150.
Yeah, that doesn't work out well either.
Yeah. Your cost
So this has
on,
happened twice
custom
in my
abutment
office.
and crown is about
you ever,
$20
do you guys do the
more.
burnout cycle to burn out cement and stuff like that if you ever have a debond?
Yeah, the abutment
so
cost
sometimes
drops a
we'll
little
burn it
bit,
out
and then you're using an extra
twice
block.
We didn't check if it was. Yeah, I mean, we did the crown. We could have just looked at the notes, right? But we're like, it looks like EMAG. I mean, just not
yes and no.
yeah,
Depending on the emergence, you just want it super gingival, like not subgingival. And then you would cement it.
One time we were in the oven and it was still on
most
fire.
of the time, you would probably
it was
do
actually
screw
on fire
retain.
inside of the oven as soon as it
Unless
opened.
unless
this is anamic. Well, it's anamic, which is a
channel or
hybrid
the
block.
angle of the implant
So
doesn't
burnout
allow you,
cycle
like
is
if it's more
basically
than
just leave it
20,
at
21
idle
degrees,
for about 5 minutes,
or
and
if
it
it comes
burns
out
out
the
the old
incline of a
cement.
cuss tip,
If you get a debond, because the cement's really hard to get off of the crown.
Have a choice.
So yeah, if you.
You wouldn't do that with Emax.
No, Emax is fine. Anamic.
Okay.
Vita Anamic is a hybrid block, so it has plastic in it. Yes, not thinking it, and yep, caught on fire twice. Yeah. Yeah, it was very, very exciting.
Okay.
All right, everybody. So that's it for in here.
Yeah.
You can leave your stuff in here. Lunch is served outside, so we can grab some lunch.
Yeah.
And then just don't. Jay says don't steal the models. Don't steal the scan posts.
Yeah.
The curing lights are yours to take.
The
No.
refills.
Correct. The tie base. Yeah.
So when I buy the kit, it comes with everything, but then the thing I'm buying is the screw and the
The scan post, the screw, and the tie base.